This unique story begins with Captain Isaac Ross, a veteran of the American War of Independence, born to a middle-class Carolina family 15 years before the war. His teenage years were largely spent fighting in the conflict and would earn the rank of captain, serving under the command of General Thomas Sumter. In 1808, at the age of 48, Captain Ross and his brother Thomas purchased land in the recently acquired Mississippi Territory. A decade later, by the time Mississippi became an American state in December 1817, Captain Ross had acquired nearly 3,900 acres to form what became known as the Prospect Hill Plantation. However, this plantation was anything but usual. For one, the slaves themselves were mostly of mixed West African and European descent, also joined by free blacks who had fought alongside Captain Ross in the war. Against Mississippi state law, Ross allowed the education of his slaves to read and write. He also schooled them in skills and trades, as well as allowing them to marry of their own free will, with Captain Ross usually participating in the ceremony and presenting wedding gifts. While again there was nothing typical about this experience in the antebellum Southland, it was an early indication that this story would be anything but typical. Captain Ross and his wife, Jane Allison Ross, had 5 children, 2 boys and 3 girls. The next year, tragedy struck the couple as their third child, Martha, died at the age of 15. The remaining 4 children did reach adulthood, and each would marry in the coming years. When Pennsylvania abolitionist Jeremiah Chamberlain came south, looking to establish a Presbyterian secondary school, Captain Ross, despite being one of the largest slaveholders in the area, became close to Chamberlain and supported the effort. By 1829, Captain Ross was 69 years old, while Jane was now 66. Later that year, Jane passed away, and following her death, Captain Ross began to focus his attention on philanthropic projects. The next year, he partnered with Reverend Chamberlain to found Oakland College, a private Presbyterian school, with Chamberlain serving as its first president. His abolitionist views would later cause issues, but for now the school educated several future prominent Mississippians. The next year, in June 1831, Ross and Chamberlain became involved in another endeavor, alongside fellow Mississippi landowners Edward McGee, Stephen Duncan, and John Kerr. Together, they founded the Mississippi Colonization Society. This was created as a chapter of the American Colonization Society, an organization set up 15 years earlier to establish a colony for freed slaves in West Africa. The motives behind the society were mixed, with both abolitionists and pro-slavery advocates involved, as well as a range of opinions in between. Captain Ross, despite being a large-scale slaveholder, and Reverend Chamberlain, despite owning a few slaves himself, each believed in future abolition of the institution. That said, they did not believe there was a viable path to citizenship and integration within Mississippi, and thus set up a plan to establish a freedmen's colony. However, Captain Ross's legacy soon came into question under tragic circumstances. The next year, his son, Isaac Ross III, passed away, and 2 years later, his other son, Arthur, also passed away in August 1834. This left Captain Ross not only devastated, but without a male heir. His daughters, Jane and Margaret, survived. Margaret had been married to the U.S. Senator from Mississippi, Thomas Reed, but had been widowed in 1829 after Reed's unexpected death. Jane had married Daniel Wade and had also been widowed in 1820. She had multiple children, with Isaac Ross Wade, named after his grandfather, Captain Ross, appointed as the heir to Prospect Hill. Under these circumstances, Captain Ross put together his last will and testament. Isaac Ross Wade was named the executor of the will, but instead of being carried out upon the death of his grandfather, Captain Ross, or his mother, Jane, the will was instead to be executed upon the death of his aunt, Margaret. The will stipulated that the Prospect Hill slaves, now numbering over 150, were to be granted their freedom. The plantation itself was to be sold to the highest bidder. Those funds would then be used for the establishment of a freedmen's colony in West Africa. Slaves would be given a choice, although not an easy one. Though freedom would seem like an obvious option, it required settling in an undeveloped and as of yet unfamiliar land. Although termed repatriation, North America was the only land most had ever known. As an additional protocol, families were not to be broken up and were to be given the opportunity to remain together regardless of the direction they chose. With the future of his estate and legacy now set in place, Captain Ross continued with his philanthropic ventures. Oakland College was celebrating its first few graduating classes, with the first student to receive a diploma, James Smiley, part of the class of 1833, going on to serve as the Vice Chancellor of the state of Mississippi. On January 18, 1835, Captain Ross celebrated his 75th birthday. A year later, however, as he turned 70,
all right, folks, welcome this morning. Once again, this is Frank, as usual. So I'm at the backstage yet. So we're going to start the show at 1 p.m. So as for now, just an introduction just to keep you basic and have some, overall basic, some basic summary of Liberia. Okay, so today we're going to focus on Liberia, just Liberia. And we're going to be giving some perspective, some historical perspective about Liberia. And then before even getting to the main topic that we have on hand, where it says the World Bank has set a bid for the newly elected president of Liberia. So for the benefit of this podcast today, of today's educational forum, for the benefit, all right, I will not be doing a justice if I just start with the World Bank, has set it big. So we have to give some historical perspective, and then before even leading to current analysis, like how we usually do it. Once again, this is the Revolutionary Repatriation Educational Lecture Series, where we don't go with opinion, but we go with facts. All right. So watch and see.
Captain Ross's health was deteriorating. The following day, Captain Isaac Ross died, concluding the journey of one of the period's most unique figures. The story of his legacy, however, would be drawn out for years to come. At the time of Captain Ross's death, preparations were being finalized for the launch of the resettlement venture. The Mississippi Colonization Society had purchased land in West Africa, and in June 1837, the first settlers, a group of 26 freed slaves from the estate of Judge James Green, established the colony of Mississippi in Africa. Nearby on the coast were other freed slave colonies, including both those of the American Colonization Society as well as the British freed slave colony of Sierra Leone. The territory was under company rule of the American Colonization Society and the Mississippi Colonization Society, with a white American governor appointed by the ACS. The role went to Robert Finley, brother of ACS founder Josiah Finley. The next year, work was completed on a territorial capital, the town of Greenville, named after Judge Green. In July, an influx of 37 new settlers arrived, but like the original group, they battled exceptionally high levels of malaria, with the colony suffering a 30% mortality rate over the first 2 years, significantly higher than the neighboring settlements. In an attempt to help consolidate the venture, the Louisiana Colonization Society, tied in closely with its Mississippi counterpart, set up its own adjacent colony. Also a challenge were the local natives, mainly the Bassa to the north and the Crew to the east. In September, Governor Finley was captured and killed by a Bassa ambush while traveling, a major blow for the struggling venture. At this point, Captain Ross's estate began to enter the equation, as back in Mississippi, Margaret had fallen ill. As part of solidifying her father's legacy, she had a memorial constructed for her late father on the grounds of Prospect Hill, with the rest of the Ross family buried adjacent. She died that same year, and while the last of Captain Ross's children, Jane, was still alive, Captain Ross's will dictated that her son, Isaac Ross Wade, would become executor of his grandfather's estate upon his aunt's death. According to the document, Prospect Hill Plantation should be sold, with the estate's 160 slaves freed and the funds used to resettle them in Mississippi and Africa. Isaac Ross Wade, however, evidently did not think highly of his grandfather's plan, filing litigation to contest the will in court. While the litigation was ongoing, the Ross slaves were considered to be free men and women, though the court ordered they continue to work at Prospect Hill in the interim, with Isaac Ross Wade obligated to pay them for their labor. Although payment was deferred and effectively never came, the American Colonization Society did fund their legal expenses. This would prove to be important as the case dragged on for 9 years. In the meantime, the land they had been promised was not proving to be as attractive a destination as hoped. Issues with malaria continued, as did skirmishing with the local indigenous. The other nearby American freedmen settlements were also struggling, though not as badly, and in an attempt to strengthen them,
But everyone has a different story to tell. Shell, which says it's losing it.
The Tampa market. Staggering rise.
Country in Northeast Africa, precisely on the Horn of Africa.
All right, once again, this is Frank. Welcome this morning as you all come on. I just want to send greeting to all of you that are coming on, all of you that are watching right now. Once again, this is Frank. I am your host. This is the Revolutionary Repatriation Educational Lecture Series aspect of WCC every Sunday at 1 p.m. So today's topic, it says, the World Bank has set a date for the newly elected president of Liberia. The World Bank has set a date for the newly elected president of Liberia. Now, as we all know, we know who controls the World Bank. So, to do our justice, right? I am not going to start with the title, the World Bank has set a date for Liberia. So, in order to understand what have been going on in Liberia, in order to understand the current approach of the World Bank towards Liberia, in order to understand that history between Liberia and the US, okay, I want us to go back a little bit into history, and then you will get to understand why the World Bank took this decision, all right, against Liberia. So let's go back in history, all right? So we have to go precept by precept, all right, line by line, little here and little there, and put them together in order to understand the current trend. So that's what we're going to be doing, all right? So I have two articles for you, all right? And one of them is the World Bank, the decision they have taken. And the other article is dating back from the year 1920s. All right. So as we all know, the year 1820s. As we all know, the year 1822 was the time free African. They said free, right? But we're going to see whether they were free today. It was a time free African were taken back to Africa and today Liberia. All right. So, like I said, in order to understand some of the decision that America have taken against Africa, or in order to understand the current decision the World Bank have taken, we have to go back in history to really understand the relationship between the U.S. and little Liberia. All right. How does the U.S. seize Liberia? How does the U.S. take Liberia? All right. So let's go back in time in history. So the same way, right? The same way you will hear people saying it was African that so African. You know, when we are giving our history, right? When we are narrating our history, if we are not mindful, all right? If we are not mindful, we will blame each other. We will blame one another, all right? Because the same way people are saying Africans sold Africans into slavery to the white man. You know, when you do that, a favor the colonizer, a favor, okay, the enslaver, because you are taking their sin and putting their sin on you. So when people say slave, the free slave that left from here went to Liberia, they went and enslaved their brothers and sisters in Liberia, in Africa. All right, you have to be careful, because when you do that again, you're taking the bread, the sin, okay, of the slave master and putting it on your people. So you see how the narrative goes. All right, and that is why we have to go in depth to understand our history. All right, so what I'm going to teach you today, please, there's no emotion. All right, I'm going to take my time to explain to you bit by bit how these things happen and why it happened. And you're going to see whether I am lying or not. We are our own judge or judges. We cannot allow the colonizer, even if the colonizer read our story, all right, even if the colonizer read our story, we have to know our story, because at the end of the day, the colonizer will still write it, because they want to write it in order to put the blame on us, on the victim, all right? Because they do not want for the next generation of theirs to come and feel guilty. So they are going to set that premises, okay, for the generation of the colonizer, the enslaver, not to feel guilty of their crime their forefather committed, all right? So in order to do justice, all right, we are going back in history. Follow me. So the first video we are going to look at, we're going to look at a couple of videos even before getting to the articles, all right? And I'm going to take my time. And let me make this clear. It's not just this video that I got my knowledge from. I already know what I'm saying, all right? So the video just added to it. So I'm going to be making some correction to the video, all right? Because not everything you see on YouTube that is being narrated by somebody means that everything in there is true. Some are true and some are not true, depending on the knowledge of the person that made the video. All right. So I'm going to be going back and forth with the video and making some correction and making some points within there as to why this happened and why it went this way. All right. So again, my knowledge did not come from the video. My knowledge came from variety of research that I have done. Again, once again, I am a Pan-Africanist. All right. So we're going to start with this video, and we have a couple of videos to do. I want you to understand the relationship between Liberia and America, how America take Liberia to be. All right. Okay.
Did America ever have an empire? It's a fascinating question with an obvious answer, but a more complicated explanation. Clearly, as most people know, post 1776, the United States of America never had a king, emperor, or any other monarch as the head of state, despite some of its decent-sized neighbors in the American continent, such as Mexico or Brazil, having emperors up until the late 1800s. The United States did have many splinter groups with imperialist ambitions, ranging from the small, self-funded adventurers, such as the multitude of Southerners loyal to the Confederacy that attempted to conquer Latin America, as well as the former Confederate soldiers and their families that settled right outside of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, and still acknowledge the Confederacy as a part of their heritage to this day, a topic we discussed a few months ago. The U.S. also had official and unofficial territories all over the world, such as the Philippines, Cuba, and Puerto Rico, concessions of the Spanish-American War, along with a plethora of islands in the Pacific Ocean, most of which have been uninhabited for decades, a relic of the U.S. military presence from World War II, although many of these are still a part of the United States to this day. The so-called scramble for Africa of the 19th century was one of the largest territorial changes in all of history, with virtually the entire continent falling under control of European powers such as France, Germany, Portugal, and the United Kingdom in only a matter of decades. Many mistakenly assert that Ethiopia was the only African country that was never colonized by Europeans, but this is actually doubly untrue, as Ethiopia was indeed annexed as a part of Italian East Africa, along with Somalia and Eritrea from 1936 to 1941, and there was actually one other country that the Europeans never seemed to get their hands on, and that of course being the West African nation of Liberia. Now, Liberia was never a European colony, but Liberia was still a product of colonialism deeply linked to the country of the United States, and can be considered to be the first and only.
All right, so I'm gonna pause in there, okay, to come in there. Now, we listen to the narrator, right? Now, most Liberians believe that Liberia was never a colony, and most Liberians believe that a society cannot colonize a nation. A society cannot colonize a country. But again, who founded a society? Did the society come from some unknown space? It was men that founded society. It was slaveholders that founded society. That society. It was the American government that founded that society. All right. Now, and if you do your research critically, all right, in depth, you will get to understand, to find out that the ACS comprises of three groups of people: government entity, the church, and private business slaveholder. Comprises three groups of people: government entity, the church, and private business owner. Now, the church were those they call the Quaker. All right. So there were three groups of people. That's how they named the ACS, because the church and the private, how they call it, slaveholder, did not want Washington, D.C., okay, to be the forerunner, okay, of the movement, all right, of the so-called free slave. They were not free. But again, we're going to see everything today. We're going to dive into it. Who were these people? What was the mission of the American government? So the church, the private slaveholder, did not want the American government to be the forerunner of that voyage. So what they did, they came out with a name to make it neutral. The ACS, the American colonization. So if you are somebody who went to colonize, that's why they call you a colonization, because they went to colonize a place to take it for them. Now, before the 1820, let's get this in mind. Africa were not divided yet. There was no boundary. There was no demarcation. There was no borders. Africa was borderless. If you check the map of Africa at that time, around the 1820 or before the 1820s, right? Now, or let's just say before 1884, Africa was borderless. But despite that, at that time, France was already in Africa, that they have territory, all right? So Great Britain were already there. Belgium, they were already in the Congo, all right? The German, they were already in on that part of like Namibia. All the, like in fact, they have already taken Africa, okay? They are part. So the 1884 Berlin Conference was just okay, a term that, you know what, now we have Africa, right? So let us go and have a meeting, all right? And then do demarcation, because I do not want, for example, the French, right? The French said, I do not want the British coming to my territory. I already have, for example, Africa, I have Guinea, I have Mali, I have Senegal, I have Benin, all those places, right? So now the French, right, they complain that, listen, I already have my territory. I do not want the British coming, taking part of my territory. All right. I do not want the Belgian coming, taking part of my territory. So let's go and sit and do demarcation and already divide Africa among ourselves already, so that we can have border. Now, with the border, you will know this is French colony, and you will not come to my colony. Now, that's how it works. So with that in mind, the United States also wanted a place. The United States also wanted a place. But bear in mind now, the United States, right, could not afford at that time, all right, to be on the forefront. Because bear in mind, the first governor to Liberia, Judy Ashmore, he died because of climatic condition. He could not stand it. And the second governor, Thomas Buchanan, he died. All right. So pay attention as we go along. All right. So for someone to say Liberia was never colonized, Liberia was colonized. Liberia was a colony to the United States. If not, okay, if not, France was going to take Liberia, or England was going to take Liberia. It was not a 300 free slave that left from here that went to Liberia that made France or that made Great Britain to leave that part of Africa out and say, you know what? We already have free slave here, okay, from the United States. We don't want to battle them. Let's just leave it with them. That was not the case, because it was already an American territory. So the U.S. too wanted a place, because at that time, all of our counterparts, all the people that took part in slavery, they already have part in Africa. And the United States wanted help on the land, as you can see the narrator saying in the video. All right, so let's continue here.
Was still a product of colonialism deeply linked to the country of the United States, and can be considered to be the first and only colony founded by Black Americans. Nearly everyone is well aware of the history of Black Americans, a group which arguably...
All right, now, sorry that I'm coming back. So what happened here was the United States government used the people they call the free slave to form a colony in Africa for their United States. And that's what happened. So when you hear people saying, oh, free slave left from here, went to Liberia and went and colonized their native people, and went and colonized their brother, and went and enslaved their brother. The same treatment they went through in the United States, it was the same treatment they took to their brothers and sisters on the African continent. And only a fool would believe that. Only a fool will believe that. All right? Now, you may ask me, why would you say that? I said that because we have evidence that we're going to show today. All right? Okay. You will never see a Pan-Africanist going on the African continent to enslave another African. To prove that, during our time of the migration of the so-called ACS taking people to Africa, there were also movement of Pan-Africanists. Why didn't they go and enslave the African that they met there? Why didn't they go, okay, and put them on plantation, the African that they met there? Because Pan-Africanists, they understood what it meant. They went, they worked with their brothers and sisters. But the people that they took from here, that the United States government took, they were not Pan-Africanists. Those are people that were trained to do what they did for the United States government. Let's continue here.
Makes up one of the largest single ethnicities in the United States and are a conglomeration of many different peoples from many regions of Africa, molded and shaped over hundreds of years through shared struggles and values. Ever since the first African arrived in the North American colonies in the early 1600s, the populace had always been split on the issue of slavery and free Africans in American society. Many Northern whites saw abolition as inevitable and wished for a resolution for the soon-to-be millions of freed slaves that didn't result in competition with native-born whites, and thus the American Colonial Society, or ACS, was born. With the express purpose of repatriating North American blacks away from the United States. In 1816, the ACS received support from many different personalities from across the political and social spectrum. Some of these abolitionists and members of the American Colonial Society had their own personal vendettas for supporting and funding such projects, such as...
Okay, now you understand again. For those of you that says Liberia was founded as a place to carry free slaves, right? Now you see, we get into a point, all right? These people, again, that like I said, I told you there were three groups of people: the United States government, the forerunner, private slave owner, and the church, the churches. They call it the Quaker, the churches. These are three groups of people who had their own interests. It was not to send free slaves to Liberia. It was never the issue of sending free slaves to Liberia that, oh, you know what? We have these slaves in America, they are suffering, you know, we feel for them. When the slave was abolished, and this is the 1820s, if you say you feel for Africans working on a plantation, okay, enslaving them, torturing them, all right, why would you just want to take a handful of people to the African continent? Why couldn't you free the entire black people? This is the 1820s, folks. This is the 1820s. And as we all know, slavery was abolished, in quote, abolished in 1865. So if you have fed for Africans so that much that you wanted to find a place for them to take them there, why did you still continue with torturing of black people in America here from 1820s to 1865? Now you see it, all right? All of these people that funded the ACS, that put their money into the ACS, they all have alternative motive. They all have alternative motive. Just how, listen to me, folks, just how in 1884, the Berlin Conference in Germany, where you have the so-called King Leopold, okay, the letter to the missionary, where they were teaching white missionary on what to do on the African continent as they go to preach the gospel, what to say and what not to say. It was the same way the people that took from here that they called them free slave. It was the same way all of these people that had the alternative motive that put their money into it to go and form a colony in Liberia. It was the same way they trained these people. But listen to them, folks. Who in this world don't want to be free? If you at that time, me, if I were in that situation, in bondage, okay, and you gave me an option, a friend, listen, we want to send you back to the African continent, but you are not going to be free. you are still going to be subjugated. You are still going to be under the rulership of the white man, your colonizer. You are still a slave. But listen, the difference here is you are no longer going to work on a plantation. Rather, you will be the one to control people to work. During slavery, then we have people, black people, that the white man used to beat and whip their brothers and sisters on the plantation to tell them to work. In America here, during slavery, it happened. We have black still beating black. But now, were they doing it on their own will? Did they do it because they wanted to do it? No. They were told by their slave master, okay, you are the one to control these people today, okay, to give me certain product of goods. All right. So if the master is saying at the end of the day they need certain product of goods and you don't produce it, what will happen? The man in charge, the black man in charge, okay, of the slave, they are coming. What they will do to you? They might lynch you, they might castrate you, they might beat you, they might break you, they might rape you in front of the thousands of the enslaved African. That's what happened with the situation of Liberia. Those that they took to Liberia, they were now Pan-Africanists. They were trained. They had no option. But they wanted to be free. Instead of being in America here and be on a plantation, they felt to themselves that, you know what, I think I would take this option. At least I will not be, at least I'll be somehow free. Okay? But it was not a country that was funded to carry free slaves. That is why, watch. Let's continue here.
Is Henry Clay and other Southern Democrats, while others had truly altruistic motives, such as the highly religious Quakers, who saw the treatment of Native Americans and blacks as a moral abomination. After several failed expeditions to the coast of West Africa, the ACS settled on the windward coast due to its relatively close proximity to the United States when compared to other areas of Africa, its moderate climate, which is somewhat comparable to the southern U.S., and because no other European power had yet claimed the land. Other proposals on where to send free blacks and emancipated slaves sought a more convenient route, such as the Caribbean island of Hispaniola or Central America, and although not much came from these, a small community of American blacks settled on the Samana Peninsula in the Dominican Republic and still exists to this day. After 1821, small numbers of free people of color and emancipated blacks arrived in the windward coast, which became Liberia, with the largest settlement becoming Monrovia, named after the U.S. President James Monroe, who had strongly supported the ACS.
All right, again, let's go by again, all right? Now, these people arrive, all right? Fast forward, in 1847, they have a country, okay? And they name that country, let's say Liberia, and they name the capital city Monrovia, which was named after James Maroon. And as we all know who James Maroon was. Now, again, we have to understand why. Folks, listen to this, right? These are the questions we ask when we do research, all right? Why these people, the free slaves are left from here, if indeed they were free, okay? If indeed they have gone back to Africa, their homeland, and now they are free, they have their own land, the kind of torture they went through in America here, why would they want to name their capital city after a man who owned slaves, who raped Africans, who tortured Africans? Why would they want to name their capital city after a slaveholder, after a slave owner? Why? Why couldn't they name the capital city after their own self or after another black man who has suffered in this country for freedom? Why they couldn't name it in the name of Marco Garvey? Okay? Why they couldn't name it, for example, okay, in the name of let's say Harriet Tubman? Like those things. Why they couldn't name it? But they name it after James Maroon, a slave holder. Now the question here is, do you think they were the one that named Monrovia? Do you think they were the one that gave the name Monrovia after a slaveholder? No. The reason to which the name, the setting, Monrovia, today that we have, it was because The same colonizer named it after James Maroon because James Maroon played a crucial role for them to have a colony in Africa. All right? Now, before the ACI was never in the picture. Okay? ACI was never in the picture. It was the American government at that time, Thomas Jefferson. All right? And at that time, again, James Maroon, who was the governor in Virginia. After 1804, when Haiti had their uprising with Ottawa to some, okay, and they managed with a small handful of soldiers and they defeated the French, and Haiti got independent in 1804. What then happened? The masses of Africans that were in Virginia, people who were protesting, people who were knowledgeable and said, well, you know what, if Haiti can do it, we can do it. So there was people in Virginia that also plotted to go against Thomas, let's say James Maroon. All right? So they had the group. So they could fail to go against James Maroon, and they were all caught. When they were caught, James Maroon then got in touch with Thomas Jefferson about the plot against him, folks. I mean, this is something I have already learned. When you go to the so-called Library of Congress, you will see them there. All right? Now, Thomas Jefferson and James Maroon met. And James Maroon told Thomas Jefferson they should kill all of the people that went on our coup. Listen to this. James Maroon said they should kill all of them. They should execute all of them. Because they wanted to kill him. They wanted to remove him. Okay? And Thomas Jefferson said, no, we cannot kill all of them. We can kill the leaders and the followers. We have to find a place for them. Now, after they killed, okay, they killed all of the leaders. Okay? Now the followers, what they did, the United States government went to Congress in meeting, couple of months, and they decided, they start like contemplating, they start thinking where to send these rebellious slaves. In fact, they call them rebellious slaves. They did not call them free slaves. But if the white man want to make himself look good, the colonizer want to make himself or herself look good, they have to get a perspective or a narrative. Now you will see them as the Messiah. All right? They call them the rebellious slave. So they went in Congress for several weeks deciding where to send the rebellious slave. Now, they said in Congress, we cannot send them to Haiti because Haiti already have an uprising movement against the enslaver. Now, they also talk about the Philippines. They said, no, we cannot send them to the Philippines because you know what? It's easier for them to still get to North America. So their plan was to take this rebellious slave totally far away, that this rebellious slave should not be close to America. They even said Brazil. They said Brazil is another colony. They said, no, if you take them to Brazil, they're going to regroup, manipulate, and still come back because it's not still far from North America. Okay? So then in Congress, the last option was Africa. Then they said, you know why? We can send these people to Africa. They can help us create a colony because Great Britain is already there. Okay? France is already there. Belgium or German. I mean, the entire Europe, they are already there. They already have land. So we need land. So we ourselves, we can use this rebellious slave to have land in Africa, to have territory in Africa, to have a colony in Africa. Since these rebellious slaves are not useful in America, they are not producing to the American economy, we can use them in Africa that they will still be productive, bringing money to our economy. And that's why exactly the date. That's why Liberia was founded for. It was never founded to carry free slaves. Because if that was the case, why in 1924, when Messiah Margot Garvey was about to send the UNIA representative, about 500 men, in fact, they went, what happened? They sent them back. Oh, were they not free slaves? Why they went in Liberia and then when they met the other free slave there, And the free slave that were there went against the men they represented that Malcolm Messiah Garvey sent to them. Why they send them back to the United States? If it was founded as a place to carry free slave, then why free slave went there and you sent them back? And after that, J.A. Hugo put an allegation against Messiah Malcolm Garvey. And when you do your research, the United States government was angry for the step Malcolm Garvey was taking. And that's how J.A. Hugo said, I will deal with him. And after that, he will never see himself as a leader in a black community. The research are there. And they went against him. And we know how the story went. The UNIA dissolved, so to speak. Some of them fled and went to Ethiopia and they went to Sierra Leone. Let's continue here.
For the next few decades, Monrovia and other American settlements were de facto territories of the United States, being a small, albeit important bastion of American values and culture, with the newly arrived American blacks being just as much strangers in this land as any white American was. They began to form their own political identity and ethnic consciousness based on individualism, civil liberties, and classical liberalism, although even among the American settlers, a class division emerged between the free people of color, who were mostly mulattoes with significant European ancestry, and the emancipated black American slaves, although both of these groups were collectively known as the Americo-Liberians. After Liberian independence in 1847, the mulattoes mostly favored the Republican Party of Liberia, which stressed anti-identitarian progressive values, while the emancipated blacks favored the Liberian Whig Party, which heavily leaned towards nationalism and other conservative ideologies. Although after 1878, Liberia...
Here's one thing you need to do before buying anything online. Don't spend another dime on Amazon until you watch this.
Effectively transformed into a one-party state, with the true Whig Party dominating Liberian politics for over a century. Directly after the American Civil War in 1865, the issue of the nearly 4 million newly emancipated American blacks was brought to a head in American politics, and opinions varied greatly even among the same demographic or political party. There never was any state-sponsored forced relocation program for freed blacks, but certain incentives were offered by the U.S. government to relocate to Liberia, and migration boomed for a short period, and in many cases, these self-proclaimed...
Again, you heard the narrator, right? Like the narrator said, there was offer that was given by the U.S. government. They did not say the ACS, because the ACS is nothing. To the whole movement of Liberia, the ACS is nothing. It's just a name because people came together. But the American government was the forefront of this. And it derived from the coup that happened in Virginia that James Monroe almost got killed. All right? So now you heard the narrator saying Liberia being a de facto nation, all right, to America. And up to today, Liberia is still a de facto nation. Again, pay attention. Like I said, in order to get to 2023 discussion, we have to see the history. Why Liberia is like that, the way it is. Why Liberia is one of the poorest countries in West Africa or in Africa, controlled by the United States. Okay? Why Liberia is so poor is because of the United States.
Claimed black settlers had as little as 1/16 African ancestry, yet because of their slave heritage, however minute, they still face discrimination. Regardless of genetics or political affiliation, most Americo-Liberians regarded themselves as more sophisticated and civilized than the indigenous West African tribes of Liberia, and hence a massive rift developed between the former and the latter, and very similarly to South Africa, Liberia was dominated by an elite minority for over a century up until relatively recently. In South Africa, they were the Afrikaners, and in the case of Liberia, they were the Americo-Liberians. And also in both cases, there was a severe backlash against the previously ruling class, with both becoming a quickly shrinking minority. Liberia was considered a strong American ally and one of the United States' most important overseas assets in the past, as throughout the various administrations, the U.S. government had poured billions of dollars into developing Liberian infrastructure, especially during the Cold War, when many other West African nations had turned to communism or socialism in the wake of.
Again, that part, it sounds so nice, right? The US has spent billions of dollars. It sounds nice, right? Now, the question here is, where did that billions of dollars or those billions of dollars go? Which sector did they go? Yes, the United States spent it, but who did they spend it on? How did they spend it? Where did they spend it? Okay, those are the questions we'll be asking. All right, and you're going to see how they spend it in here. Who they spend it on? For who? For what? And even as that, who resources? The Liberian people resources. So the billions of dollars they are talking about, where did the resources come from? Let's continue here.
Anti-Western sentiment following European colonialism. This set the stage for the Liberian Civil Wars, plural, two of the most deadly conflicts in all of African history, with almost 20% of the Liberian population perishing during or directly after the war, either as a direct casualty of violence or from starvation brought about by the destruction of infrastructure. Although economic development and international relations were remarkably stable and positive during the period of true Whig dominance, the indigenous West African populace was still widely disenfranchised, and Samuel Doe took the mantle of first Liberian president of native Liberian descent in 1980 after he led a military coup assassinating President William Tolbert and effectively ran a military dictatorship.
Again, to make some correction in there, it was not Doe that killed Tolbert. Okay, but again, you that take the lead of a coup, you become the person, on the face of the cover. Even Tolbert's wife herself said it. The hand that killed her husband was a white hand. It was not Doe. It was a white hand that assassinated her husband. Now, we're going to see in another video some of the reasons why Tolbert was killed, why Tolbert was seen as a threat. All right? The United States government is the problem to Liberia.
Dictatorship until the first Liberian Civil War in 1989, when he was kidnapped and tortured by members of the National Patriotic Front of Liberia, all the while being filmed up until his merciless and grisly demise, public execution by decapitation. This brutal display of sadism set the stage for the next 2 decades of destabilization and turmoil in the nation of Liberia, as various groups viciously fought for power in this West African nation, and the Americo-Liberians' monopoly on politics dissolved almost overnight. Although Liberia was historically one of the most economically prosperous in Africa, ever since the Liberian Civil Wars, combined with other natural disasters such as
the man you see sitting here, at that time he was a sergeant, a master sergeant or so. That was Doe, okay, who later became the president. Now, again, the question here is, in some point of time, why did the American government support this man? Okay, if the American government or Washington, D.C. say they support rule of law, right? Okay, they are democratic institution, all right, that need peace, right? Why this man, so to speak, let's just say, if this man killed Tolbert, why the United States government supported this man after this man had killed a government? If Tolbert was in favor of the United States government and Tolbert got killed by this man, why did the United States government support this man? Why did the United States government then go against this man who killed a government, who killed a leader? If that leader was in support of the United States government, or if that leader was in support of the United States foreign policy, and this man went and killed Turbo, why did the United States come on the side of this man? Why the United States supported this man? Because the hand that killed Turbo was not this man. It was a white hand. And they used this man at that time being an idiot, okay, a high school dropper, a master sergeant, all right? They used him and he accepted that he killed Turbo. And that's how he gained the support of the American government. Now, why would the American government gain this man's support after this man again put 13 men on firing squad and killed them? America still believed in this man, supported this man. Or could it be that America told him, Washington D.C. told him to kill those people? Because those men that don't kill, that you saw the picture, those were all Turbo right-hand men. So if those people could not have been killed, or if to say those people, they was not going to kill them, those people in their mind, okay, that he was instructed by the colonizer that if you don't kill those people are going to rise against you and they're going to come back and it's going to jeopardize American interest. So in other words, this man right here was fighting for the American interests. This native man. Just how in quote, the free slave in quote, they were not free, they called them rebellious slave. Just how they went in Liberia or in Africa today, Liberia, and worked for the United States government, okay, because somehow they wanted to be free. That's how these idiots, okay, these other idiots, native men too, went and worked for the American government. That's how Liberia had always been played a pawn by Washington, D.C. That's why there have been no peace. That stunning little country have been suffering. And poverty is on the rise. It's because of the United States government, Washington, D.C. Follow me, folks. You're going to learn something today until we come to 2023, why the World Bank has taken that decision. Follow me. It was a reason the war went in Liberia. It was the support of the United States government. If not, war was never going to be in Liberia. In fact, we have come to understand or learn or uncover the story that the ammunition that were being used were all American-made weapons that was in Liberia to kill Liberians and to destroy Liberia. Liberia being a de facto nation, being a colony that was founded by the United States, America feel that the Liberian people should not move on. Even if they have to move on, they have to move on with the mandate of the United States. That's why the war came. That was one reason the war came. Do not ally with different nations unless America tells you to ally with that nation. That's why the war came. Let's continue here.
The AIDS epidemic and Ebola outbreaks, the country has experienced one of the steepest declines in economic growth, life expectancy, and standards of living in all of history. And interestingly, Prince Johnson, one of the men partially responsible for the kidnapping, torture, and public execution of Samuel Doe, still serves as Liberia's.
Okay, again now, you see what goes around comes around? The same Doe that the United States supported after, quote unquote, he killed Turbo, which of course we know it was not he that killed Turbo, but quote unquote, after he killed Turbo, right? Then why again the United States government did not protect him? Why again another coup came again to remove Turbo? And this time around, they used Prince Johnson. They say Prince Johnson was used again by the United States government to go kill Doe. They say Prince Johnson, today he's senator. So you see how the United States have been playing. You see how the United States have been playing in Liberia history. You see how the United States have been playing on the Liberian people. Now, if you do your research and go follow deeper, We will come to that. The man to whom today he's in jail, but he's not in jail because of Liberia, because of the war that was fought in Liberia. He's not in jail for that. And he will not be in jail for that because the United States government was part of the plot of the war in Liberia. That's why they will not put Charles Taylor in jail for the crime committed in Liberia, because they sent him there, they supported him there. But here it is though. The United States funded the NPFL, the how they call it, National Patriotic Front, and made Charles Taylor the head. But later on down the line, they did not believe that Charles Taylor was going to deliver to their promises. Later on down the line, they believed that Charles Taylor was going to betray them. And then what the United States government did? The United States government funded the INPFL, the Independent National Patriotic Front, and then made President Johnson the head of the INPFL. And funded it. Do you see how the United States government operates? Let's continue. We are learning history and come to current event.
Senator to this day. Americo-Liberians only make up about 2 to perhaps no more than 5% of the Liberian population, although when including the descendants of those from the Caribbean, this percentage may double. However, this is a far cry from nearly 10% Americo-Liberian in 1980 and even higher than that in the past. This is due to a variety of factors, notably a much higher emigration rate, as being better off financially allows Americo-Liberians an easier chance to escape the chaos, as well as a considerably lower birth rate than that of other West African ethnicities in Liberia because of their urban centralized nature, and lastly due to intermarriage with.
And after today, right, we still have that sentiment. After today, we still have that sentiment. So you heard the narrator. So during the war now, what happened? The 5% of the Americo-Liberian, all right, they fled back to the United States. And then who suffered the war? The native people. They didn't care. The American sat down in our embassy in Liberia and watched Liberians die like ants, like chicken.
With other groups in Liberia, which has become increasingly common in recent times. Another group that is remarkably similar in history and culture to the Americo-Liberians are the Sierra Leone Creoles of the neighboring country of Sierra Leone, which was also established as a colony for former African slaves by the United Kingdom, and Creoles also make up about 2 to 5% of Sierra Leone's population in the present day. Unlike the Americans, the British kept Sierra Leone as an overseas colony, not gaining full autonomy until 1961, and following in the footsteps of Liberia, Sierra Leone was embroiled in a civil war in the 1990s and had been mired with poverty, disease, and economic collapse ever since. Other former slaves and free blacks from the United States and other European colonies, including the Caribbean and Brazil, settled in many other parts of West Africa, including Nigeria, Ghana, and Bioko Island in Equatorial Guinea, with many re-assimilating into the dominant African culture, while others have still maintained a unique identity. The Americo-Liberian culture is in many ways derivative of 19th century antebellum southern United States, with many of the colonists coming from places such as Virginia, Maryland, Mississippi, or Georgia, as well as having a strong Caribbean vibe from other settlers from Barbados or Jamaica that integrated with the Americo-Liberian population. They are a fascinating contribution to Liberia today and still convey many of the ideologies and principles that America was founded on. So again, I have to ask, did America ever have an empire? Please let me know your thoughts on the rise.
All right, so that's the first video, right? As we go on, so that you can have a deep understanding of the history of Liberia, and then before coming to current, okay? Why the United States got mad, okay? War went to Liberia, and why today the United States is still mad. Why the United States is still angry, all right? Because she feels Liberia is a colony to her. Liberia is her private property. Okay, let's continue here.
Of friendship and 4.7 million people belonging to 20 unique ethnic groups. A number that is growing rapidly as the average Liberian woman gives birth to about 5 children throughout her life. Due to a combination of Liberia's high fertility rate and its high mortality rate from local disease, over half of its population is under the age of 25. This small country was also one of the 3 West African countries most heavily plagued by the 2014 Ebola outbreak, along with the neighboring countries of Guinea and Sierra Leone. To add insult to injury, the country is still recovering from 2 bloody civil wars, the most recent one ending just a decade ago. My intentions were not to create a video that perpetuates negativity, but it is necessary that I put this out there ahead of time in order to fully dissect the context of this video. So let's get started with the founding of the modern-day country of Liberia. Prior to the formation of the modern-day country, Liberia was composed of a collection of small kingdoms and chiefdoms. Among these were the Kru people, a resilient group who were popular.
All right, so this is the time period he's talking about where there was no Ebola, right? So this is time period where he's talking about, for example, Eritrea, okay, was a nation by itself, like kingdom, okay? So people that were in, for example, the Kru area, they all spoke Kru and they lived in our area with their chief, with their king, with their own rule of law and sort of those things. And just how, you know, it just go out of the Mende people. So they have their own place. All of them spoke Mende. There was not like mixed up. There wasn't mixed up. So that's the time period he's talking about where there was no Ebola, nothing. But every kingdom, you know, was a nation, was a state, spoke the same language. So that's the time period he's talking about. Let's continue here.
Regarded as expert sailors and advocated a culture that chose death over being taken into slavery. Early European merchants referred to the area as the Pepper Coast, and eventually the Grain Coast, and I'm sure you can probably guess why. As much as I'd like to continue talking about the early history of this area, the purpose of this video is to discuss the modern state of Liberia. So let's continue. In 1816, white Americans saw the ever-growing threat of Black American freedmen as their numbers continued to grow at an alarming rate.
Okay, so from the beginning, you got, you know, some historical perspective already about this whole called movement of people going back to Africa, I mean to Liberians, that, oh, they found a place, right? Now, in the second video, right, you're going to see another, you know, perspective even higher as to why these people were taken to Liberia. Were they free slaves? No. Were they free as the people says to you? No. Did they actually go to Liberia because they were finding a place for them to go there because the white men felt sorry for them, that they were suffering, they were torturing them? Was that a reason? No. But you heard the narrator, right? The growing population, it was demanding here, okay, and slave owners were not afraid that these people, they are becoming problematic. We have to take them from the society before they create more people, okay, that will give a problem. Let's continue here.
In response to this, they founded an organization known as the American Colonization Society. It was originally founded with the intentions to relocate Black freedmen from the South and into areas where they would not pose any potential threat to the stability of slave owners or their plantations.
Okay, now you got it clear now, right? So the reason that they took these people back to Africa because they were problematic and they have to take them from the United States here okay? Because they did not want for these people to give problem to the slave owner, okay? Because they were more and more becoming aggressive. They were more and more becoming rebellion. That's what they call it, the rebellion slave. After especially they went against James Maroon in Virginia, that's what they call it, the rebellion slave. They were rebelling, so they have to take them out of the United States, okay, out of the United States, in order to send them somewhere, but it will also be productive still to the United States economy, because they felt that if these people are not productive here, right, we can send them somewhere that it will be productive. Just how England took some of their slaves from Barbados and took them to Sierra Leone, and today they were productive at that time to the Queen, right? Right? So the United States government at that time too, they said we can take the rebellion slave and take them to Africa too. Now they can create a colony for us too. Now they can still, produce to our economy, to the slaveholder. Now, if anybody come to you and tell you Liberia was never a colony, put slap in their ear. No, I'm not saying slap then, but yeah, put slap in their ear, okay? That Liberia was never a colony. If anybody tell you say Liberia was founded as a place to carry free slave, slap them good. I'll tell you it.
However, over time, it would become dominated by people who were largely anti-slavery activists who wanted to relocate blacks for humanitarian reasons. Their goal was to move black people to a place where they'd be able to live in a society.
Who wanted to remove slaves for humanitarian reasons? Humanitarian reasons. It was not to carry free slave again, to find a place for them, okay? And that humanitarian reasons, as we all know, if the white men tell you, say, we are coming to do humanitarian, we are humanitarian. We all know the kind of humanitarian work the European did in Africa, according to how they call it, King Leopold, the so-called King Leopold. When you read a letter, King Leopold missionary, a letter to the missionary, if you read it, you will see what is in there. White men have done nothing good on the African continent in terms of their missionary.
Society that treated them as equals and thus allow for a better chance to lead successful lives. The United States wanted to establish a colony in Africa to do just that. Though this plan sounded good on paper, there were a few major problems with it. Problem number one was that the indigenous peoples of Liberia were unwilling to sell any land to the United States for the establishment of this colony. The settlers had to take refuge on the nearby Scareboat Island until they were able to procure territory on the mainland. These American ships sailed all along the coast of West Africa, searching for suitable land to establish the colony.
All right, so now again, right? Let's make this clear here. Like I said, for some of us, we have done the research. We already know the research. So we can see a video. We will make correction to the video. Now, the United States went to Africa during that time period, the 1820s, right? And they landed in this part of Africa, right? They did not buy land. They did not even negotiate for land. That is just kind of while watching. They did not negotiate for land. Okay? Because all our colonizer was already in Africa, and those people did not negotiate for land. So America was so different that they wanted to go negotiate for land to buy land. When America herself have taken part in the slave trade, torture slave black people, brutalize black people. So now why would she go on the African continent all of a sudden? Oh, she's now different. Then she want to buy land. Okay? Did they give land to the slave in America here? Or they enslaved African and made them to work on a plantation? The slave in America at that time, you never took good care of them. All of a sudden, why would you just want to take slave in Africa and then want to buy land to put them there, to treat them, to take care of them? So when it got here, folks, this is what happened. the chiefs, the kings, they welcomed them. And they told them, we will receive our people. We will integrate our people into society. But their mission was different. Mind you, before they left and went to Liberia, today Liberia, or went to Africa, today Liberia, these were people that have already sat in meeting with their plan, with their memo of what to do. And they have already taught these rebellious slaves of what to do when they get to Africa. When they get to Liberia, today Liberia, but that time was not Liberia. So they were already trained what to do. So when they got there, the plan changed. The chiefs and the king they met there told the American representative for Congress, and also from the independent slaveholder business, and also from the churches, because the group of people were there. Okay, so the plan changed. What they thought was going to happen, it did not happen. They did not get their land. They did not settle them. They told them, leave our people, we will integrate them into society. If indeed you took these people to Africa and they met people there and the people welcomed them, why do you want to stay? Leave and come back. You have already taken them. Bravo. But why are you still there demanding land for them? Did you demand land for African in America here to live better life? Did you demand land for them to have land to own property? Did you demand land from them? No, folks, if you do your research, right? These are the things that will be coming to your mind. Then to go listen to some kind of whitewash book. So the native told the American representative, we have received our people. You can now go. We will integrate them into society. We welcome them. But they said, no. Because the aim was to go and have a land to create a colony, just like the French, just like the British, just like the Belgian, just like the German, just like the Portuguese, and so forth, because America herself has benefited from enslavement. And the other people that have benefited from enslavement, they were on the African continent. So America needed to join her counterpart to have her own land. It wasn't easy. Let's continue here. So as a story goes, not in this video, but what I've learned as a story goes, the first representative that went and met the native people, the native people did not agree. That representative left and came back to Washington, D.C. and told Washington, D.C. that no, the people resisted. Then they sent a second representative again just to get the land. The second representative went back to Washington, D.C. and said, no, the people resisted to give land. The people are saying we should leave their people and go. We have taken the African American back. We should leave them there and go. They will welcome them. They will integrate them into society. Washington, D.C. being so stubborn because she wanted a colony, what she then did, she sent a third person, Robert Stockton, who was a veteran Navy. This time around, they sent a military man.
But every group they encountered declined any offers to sell their lands. Eventually, Naval Officer Lieutenant Robert Stockton forced a local leader to sell a strip of land to them. As a result of this, his newly established African colony was continuously attacked by locals in 1824 and had to be fortified to avoid being overrun. The second problem is that blacks being sent to this area likely did not descend from locals, and thus could not relate to the indigenous peoples or their ways of life. And problem number 3 was that even if they were ethnically related to the locals, most of them were born and raised in the United States, given American names, and therefore accustomed to American language, culture, religion, and overall ways of life, which greatly differ from that of the local practices. This led to tensions between the locals and the immigrants, but we'll cover that shortly. For now, we'll continue discussing the formation of Liberia. After being fortified and protected from angry locals, the colony was named Liberia in 1847, and its capital was named Monrovia in honor of President James Monroe, as he was credited with supplying much of the funds to the project from the U.S. Treasury. In addition to the initial point of settlement, other colonization societies purchased more land to add to the colony and sent thousands of slaves who were freed after the abolition of the slave trade. Because it was not internationally recognized as a sovereign state, European merchants continuously undermined Liberia's influence by trading in and out of its borders without permission.
Now, you listened to that, right? So after 1847, Liberia gained her independence. Now, listen for me, folks. We are getting somewhere now, right? After 1847, when Liberia gained her independence, right? Now, it seems that Liberia will no longer be under American control now, right? So, Liberia started gaining international, friendship with other people, like, for example, the German or the French or the British, right? Because she was not independent. That did not go well with America. It did not go well with America. Once upon a time, around the 1920s or around 1922, the United States took France and Great Britain to UN in Geneva, Switzerland, against Liberia. That they were how they call it, being into Liberia, okay, manipulating their influence in Liberia. Meanwhile, they have their own of colony, and America won that in Switzerland with the UN. And it was told that this is American colony. You have your colony, you have, like France, you have Ivory Coast, right? You have Guinea, you have Mali, you have Benin, you have Burkina Faso, you have Senegal, you have a lot. And America only have one called Liberia, that one colony. So America won against France and America won against Great Britain. And that's how they pull back. But yet there was still rivalry. And it is that rivalry we are coming to today. It is that rivalry that created the war in Liberia. America said if they would die, they would die. But we must gain our colony back. Let's continue here.
The British were the ones to first recognize the Republic of Liberia, making it the first republic in Africa, and they signed treaties of friendship and commerce in the year 1848. Despite the
Now you heard that, right? So they signed treaty with Britain. And they also, in other research, you will see they also signed treaty with France. You getting me now? So America felt that she was losing her colony. So now you understand how the war came into Liberia now, right? We get into a place. Now you understand how the war got to Liberia. You understand how the war got to Liberia, how Liberian people died. Now you're getting it. Follow me, follow me. Let's continue here. Follow me.
The United States' foundational role in the founding of Liberia, they still did not recognize Liberia as a sovereign state, likely due to fears of the impact that it would have on slavery. As a result of this, no massive migration of freed slaves ever happened, even though that was the basis of Liberia's establishment in the first place. It wasn't until late 1862 that the United States finally recognized Liberia's sovereignty and established official relations with them. Over the next century, ties between Liberia and the United States remained close, perhaps too close. Freed slaves began to pour in and make this place into their home. During this time, heavy modernization began to trickle along the coast where schools, hospitals, and local shipbuilding industries and trade expanded rapidly. Another thing that happened during this time was an attempt to establish firm control over the native populations further inland. But these attempts were halted after the American Colonization Society withdrew its funding, leaving Liberia to depend on exports of local raw materials and agricultural products, which did not generate enough income to modernize their nation. As a result of this, they're forced to take.
So, as you can see here, right? What is taking place here now, right? These are all, like, at that time, Liberia was one of the leading nations in the world when it comes to timber. Okay? So these are all mineral resources now that are being taken to the United States. And at that time, as it says, right, the treasure of Africa, like you see how in France, right, all the French money that like country in Africa that have been colonized by the French, right? At that time, right? That's how Liberia was like. Everything Liberia owned was coming to America. All right. And at that time, our finance minister was white man from America. The finance minister in Liberia, right, to Liberia, was hired by Washington, D.C., a white man. And then you will have a representative in Liberia who was American-Liberian, so to speak, because I'm teaching history, who was American-Liberian, okay, but who was a slave, all right, who was a slave, but working for the slave master, but just in Africa, okay? But after the finance minister was white, appointed by the American government, because Liberia was a territory, a colony. So all the resources, okay, were coming to America. Our iron ore, our timber, our law, our uranium. Liberia got uranium. But even that, as that, they don't even educate Liberia that Liberia got uranium. But America have been stealing our uranium. Iron ore. Today, America got the largest reserve of iron ore in Texas, taken from Liberia. Okay? Now, when our leaders, any leader that come in Liberia, want to distant, let me not use a word, okay? Let me not use the word distant, but want to do business with other nations that will benefit Liberia and make the United States angry, and that's how war came to Liberia. Let's continue here. Okay? Let's continue here. Shout out Black Reverend, shout out for the $10, man. Shout out for the $10. Let's continue. Now, let's continue here.
Take out massive loans from foreign lenders to compensate. In 1909, the Liberian government officially declared bankruptcy, with assistance largely from the United States government. Liberia was able to climb out of its hole, but followed up with poor economic decisions and relied heavily on foreign leases and loans to bring revenue into the country. These foreign leases and loans only served.
Okay, pay attention again, all right, with that foreign loan. Okay, now, with all the resources America took from Liberia, right, Liberia still became poor and poverty, okay, as you see in the video. Now, again, let's go back to today's topic. It says what? The World Bank has set its bet for the newly elected president of Liberia. Let's continue here. Let's continue.
To worsen Liberia's financial burdens. To make matters even worse, tensions between the American descendant blacks and the indigenous peoples were high throughout the history of Liberia. The ruling minority, for example, was composed entirely of Americo-Liberians, which was an ethnic group that descended from the founding wave of freed slaves in the early 19th century, who composed.
Again, now you already understand why that happened, why there was elitism, why there was conflict between the American Liberian and the indigenous people, right? We already know that, but I will just re-emphasize on it. The reason why that happened because these people were not Pan-Africanists who had the idea of Pan-Africanists of going on the African continent to work with their brothers and sisters. It was not in the skill of these people. Because but at that time, when what the Americans, how they call it, government was sending these people, they were already mob movement or other Pan-Africanists who were on the African continent and did not enslave their African brothers and sisters. Did not oppress their African brothers and sisters. But why this particular group of people did that? That's the question we should be asking. Why this particular group of people did that? Because they were trained by the American government and the private slaveholder and the churches to do what they did. So it was all planned by the American government. You see, so what happened here was now, at the beginning, when it started this whole thing, and it worked, right? It became part of the life of the people. It became like a system now. So it was within them now, right? So It was power. So it became part of their system because it's something that it was trained and it's something that it was doing. So it just became part of the system. Okay? So they start training their relatives, okay, their children to take over the colony, to take over the colony. So it just became part of them. Because they were used to it now, like, oh, you know what? Let's just continue it. But they did do it with their willing mind, like, you know what? We are going to Africa. We are going to enslave those Africans that are there. We are going to oppress those Africans that are there. No. That's why I showed the first video so that you can see what happened here. So by you just saying, oh, it was African that left from here who already endured slavery, but then when they tortured the other African that were there, they enslaved the other African that were there, you are just also saying it was African who sold African into slavery. But what we want to say here is there have always been manipulation among us to go against each other. So it is that stand that we are looking at. I'm not looking at because another black man went and beat another black man. So as she said, oh, that black man tortured another black man. What led to that is what we are looking at. The system that led to that is what we are looking at.
Posed just 5% of Liberia's population, yet controlled the majority of the government and its wealth. These Americo-Liberians built their government and economic structure to mirror that of the United States, utilizing the same language, architecture, laws, government, and social hierarchy. Even the flag of Liberia mirrors that of the American flag. Liberia also shows clear American influence in the fact that it has not yet adopted the metric system. This brings me to another problem to add to the list of problems that I brought up earlier. Americo-Liberians viewed themselves as a distinct and superior ethnic group to the locals. In a system similar to that of the Jim Crow laws in America.
Now you see it, right? Because that's how they were taught. That's what they told them. So why were people who were in America here, right, who they saw them as inferior? Then why would they want to go on the African continent, see their brothers and sisters who look like them, and then see them as inferior and then be superior? Why would they want to do that? Why would they want to do that? Why would they want to leave from America here, a nation that saw them as inferior? Why would they want to leave from here and then go on a continent where they see their freedom, where they see their brothers and sisters, and then took them as inferior as well, and then became superior? Why would they want to do that?
Or apartheid of Southern Africa. They did not integrate with the local Africans and largely married only other Americo-Liberians exclusively, all the while retaining their own ethnic identity, culture, and ways of life. Perhaps through centuries of brainwashing by their white masters back in the United States, their government, architecture, society, and culture showed clear influence from the plantations of southern United States. And what
All right, so now you heard it, right? They were brainwashed. Now you heard it from the narrator himself. Okay? They were brainwashed to do what they did to the people they met there. So now again, the question then becomes, was Liberia founded as a place to take free slaves?
had been done to them by whites was now being done by them to the locals. Throughout their history, they did everything they could to keep their people in power, all the while subjugating the locals to intense discrimination, in addition to persistent attempts at civilizing them and promoting Western morals and values. One of the worst examples of this happened during an economic crisis in the year 1930, where they utilized indigenous people as forced laborers in a system hardly distinguishable from slavery. Shortly after, the government was overthrown and the president was replaced by Edwin Barclay, who proceeded to reevaluate the laws of Liberia. Over the next few decades, new mineral wealth was discovered, which increased government revenue and allowed for modernization to continue along the coastal regions. However, the interior populations that were almost entirely composed of indigenous people remained neglected and underdeveloped by the government. In 1944, President William Tubman allowed locals to participate in mainstream social and economic offices, and even allowed them the right to vote. Despite all of these changes, the Americo-Liberians still controlled the vast majority of the wealth and power of the nation, and the gap between them and the locals only widened. So he took more questionable approaches, such as allowing himself to have 7 consecutive terms in office, where he could remain until his death in 1971. By this time, the patience of the indigenous people grew thin, and they became increasingly less tolerant towards their Americo-Liberian rulers. Since most of the country lived in poverty, President William Tolbert tried to promote local industry by raising prices of imported goods, which were met with.
So now, bear with me, folks, as we go on, right? So this is Tolbert. So this is the man that was killed by the CIA. And then they used another native man, because let me tell you something. You know what the white folks do? You know what the oppressors do? They rely on our struggle. They rely on our situation. They rely on what we are experiencing, what we are going through. Okay? And then when they do that chaos, and then they rely on that, and then says, oh, it was because of this thing happened to the people. So this is Tolbert. This is the man that was killed by the CIA, and then they used Doe to say it was Doe that killed this man, because at that time, after they killed this man in coup, then they made Doe to take the stand as he was the coup plotter, and he killed this man. And this man, Tolbert, he was the vice president to Tubman from 1944, I believe, to the 1970s or 71. And then he died in power. The guy who they said he ran for 7 decades, from 1944 to all the way to 1971. And he died in power. Now, during that time, this man, Tolbert, was the vice president to Tubman. Okay? Now, during that time, you heard a narrator saying the slave, how they call it, the Americo-Liberian enslaved the native people and they work on plantation just like, like in the United States, right? Now, the time period he's talking about, it was around the 1926 when Harvey Firestone decided to have a plantation in Liberia today, the Firestone plantation, right? They used the native people, okay? They set an agreement with the government where the native will go and work, and Firestone were paying the funds to the government. Instead of the native people taking pay, the pay was going to the government. So you see the rivalry, you see the drift, you see the confusion, you see the animosity that is being and that was built throughout the years, leading to the 1980. Now, when this guy got in power, Tolbert, he decided to change the narrative, which of course we're going to see that in the next video, right? We're learning history here before we can get to the current situation. I want you to see the history between the United States and Liberia. The Washington, D.C. Now, when we are saying the United States here, right, folks, don't be emotional. All the white folks that will watch this thing, don't be emotional. We are not talking about ordinary American here. We are talking about a system that was built. We are not talking about ordinary white folks. We don't care for you. Our concern is not you. You have no power. We are talking about a system that was built to benefit the white elite, to benefit the colonizer and the descendant of the colonizer, to benefit the enslaver and the descendant of the enslaver. We're not talking about ordinary white folks here. We are talking about a system, a perpetual system that was built to destroy. That's what we are talking about here. So when this guy got in power, Tolbert, he decided to change the narrative. He decided to change the narrative. Now, in changing the narrative, he started to bring native people into power. Now, if you see from the first video, I believe, right? The people that don't put on firing squad to the beach and fire them, which of course today actually have been transformed by how they call it President George Manuel Weah. So you will see that maybe later, but not today, maybe another podcast, you'll see that. All right. George Weah had transformed that place into a historical place. All right. Now, those people that was put on firing squad, the CIA told Doe to kill those people because those people were Turbo right-hand men. If not, the reason for which the CIA killed Turbo, okay, those men was going to come and infiltrate and either remove Doe or educate Doe. And then the American foreign, how they call it, self-interest for which Turbo was killed, it was going to go again down the line, and then they were going to come up with another plan. So when this man came in, he decided to change. He decided to bring, native people into government. Okay, and not only that, he decided to change, towards Russia, because this man was president for all that long year. He saw that America cannot help Liberia. He saw that America will not transform Liberia. He saw that Liberia being like that, it is America that has made Liberia poor. It is America that has been stealing the resources and exploiting the Liberian nation. So he knew America would not. He knew he would not go to America and America help to transform Liberia. Because he had been there for all those years, being a vice president, he has seen all. He decided to turn to Russia. Power conflict over Liberia, right? Let's continue here.
Intense criticism from the locals. As a result of this, a 1980 military coup led by Samuel Doe murdered the president and 13 of his cabinet members, establishing a new government which they called the People's Redemption Council. This government, however, proved to be arguably even more corrupt than the former, as the leader of the coup, Samuel Doe, was unpopular and actually declared himself the winner of the election that took place 5 years later, despite the fact that he had actually lost. This new government was also inexperienced and unfit to rule. He also showed obvious biases towards the Krans, the indigenous ethnic group to which he belonged. This was done in a manner no different from the corrupt Americo-Liberians that this coup had overthrown. He then proceeded to shut.
So here is the thing, right? When Doe got in power too, now another native man, right? He was still being a puppet. He was still being a puppet to America. But mind you, the people he put on firing squad, those are ethnic people. And some of them majority from Nima County. All right? Who were working with Turbo, who Turbo sent in Russia, for example. In Russia, and some of them went there, they got military training and CIA, Russian CIA training and those things, right? They were the people don't kill by the command or outside influence. So what then happened here? Those people from Nima County went against Doe. So you see how the Western will always play the power conflict among us, okay, to accomplish their aim. All right. So why when somebody lost the election and they rigged the election, America said nothing, because at that time he was still in support of the United States. But later on, when Doe became smart, when he knew that being with America is not going to transform Liberia, is not going to help Liberia, he decided to take the roadmap of Turbo, of going to Russia, of going to outside nation for help. And no, it became her boss. So we're going to see that in another article as we see how actually the war happened in Liberia, why it was fought. We're going to see that in another article then before we come to the World Bank article. And then you see what is going on in Liberia. What has been going on and what is still going on. This is education. This is now to say, oh, he don't like America. I don't care. I love Liberia. We are here to expose what America have done to that tiny little nation there, putting America, Liberia, and African people together, putting African here together, because our people, majority, they are not aware of the hand that is being played.
Shut down newspapers and political activity, and further stirred the pot with other indigenous ethnic groups who were formerly peaceful towards one another. Disgruntled with yet another corrupt government, thousands of people sought refuge across the Liberian border into the Ivory Coast. There, Charles Taylor, a former deputy minister who allegedly was imprisoned for theft of government funds, organized and trained 100 of these refugees. In 1989,
So now, Charles Taylor, quote to speak, in quote, who said he escaped an American prison in America here. Now, all of a sudden, he's in Liberia. Okay? So, he's in Liberia, right? Now, we're going to see in another article, okay, who this man was, who supported him, and in fact, how the war started in Liberia, what brought about the conflict. We're going to see it now in that article. All right?
he marched his force into Liberia, where thousands of Liberians from all backgrounds joined him. Within a year, Taylor's army captured and executed Samuel Doe, which led to a full-on civil war.
All right, so I'm going to take this video. So, but first of all, it was not Doe. I mean, it was not Charles Taylor that executed Doe. It was Prince Johnson that executed Doe. So, we're going to take this video out, right? And then get to the article. And after the article, we play one video and then go to the World Bank article. So, now, let's get to an article, right? The article is about 300 pages, but we're just going to read certain part so you can see, you know, what actually been happening in Liberia from, and this article is dating back from 1820s to 2015, 1820 to 2015. So that's how this article is long from the Library of Congress. I mean, it's very intense. All right. So let's see something within our article there. All right. Hopefully it come out because it's an article I tried this morning to bring it out. So hopefully. Okay, let's see this right here. All right. Yeah, so good. So it is here. I can't download it right now, but I think you can see it. All right, you can see it. So I'm just going to read something there, okay? Quick. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but bear with me. I'm going to try for you to see something that I want us to look at. So first of all, that's the title of the book. It says 2 centuries of U.S. military operation in Liberia, challenges of resistance and compliance. If we resist the United States interests, it will come with a pain that will make you to comply. It will come with a force that will make you to comply. So 2 centuries, dating back from 1822. So we started with a video, right? That all how slave left from here and went blah, 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 right? So let's go to the book. Let's go to the book here. University Press, Maxwell, Air Force Base, Alabama. All right, so let's go. So Library of Congress catalog and publication data. So that's a very intense article here, right? Like I said, when it comes to the history of Liberia, I mean, you wake me up at any time, I will tell you how it is, and this everything. All right. So we're going to start from here forward. All right. Now we're going to read this and then read the introduction. But yeah, and then we'll go to the next place because it's 300 pages. All right. So in fact, 381 pages. So let's read. When I first, so this is the writer, okay? The writer is the one that said when I first. So let's see a background of something here first, right? Now, He said, when I first arrived in Liberia during the war in 2002 to work for the humanitarian organization Médecins Sans Frontières as a non-medical contractor, as a non-medical coordinator, my prior knowledge of the country and the conflict in Liberia had been gained from reports published by established institutions and media outlets. From these sources, I gained the impression that this was a civil war that started around 1990s. And this is how most Liberians believe. For me, I now believe it because I did my research. All right? I now believe it. At first, I believe it at that time. But after, I had the opportunity to resources. Okay? I took advantage of those resources. And then I got to understand about the whole plot of the war in Liberia. So he said, war in Liberia, right? After he interviewed a lot of other media and publication and so forth, it sounded that it was a civil war. Okay? That's what he's saying here. But he said it was not a civil war, which of course for some of us we know. So I'll read that again. He said, when I first arrived in Liberia during the war in 2002 to work for the humanitarian organization Médecins Sans Frontières as a non-medical coordinator, my prior knowledge of the country and the conflict in Liberia has been gained from reports published by established institutions and media outlets. From these sources, that is local media and whatsoever, from these sources, I gained the impression that this was a civil war that started around 1990. And these sources, right, these local media outlets in Liberia, I'm not looking down on them for sure, okay? But they are not doing intensive research. They are all research that have been put there by the same White Watch. You see it? Now, and he said, from these sources, I gained the impression that this was a civil war that started around 1990. The general picture was cleared because they were all brainwashed now. Okay? They were all brainwashed. But let's continue here. The people in the Liberian government, headed by Charles Taylor, were the bad guy. And now, and again, that is the White Watch. You see it? So now, they take the attention of the Liberian public away from the colonizer, from the true people that are causing the problem in Liberia, and then put it on a man because he was the one that held a gun. He was the one that was killing, right? They put the attention on it. That is a White Watch. But now the writer is telling us, I gained the impression that this was a civil war because that's what the local people told him, right? He gained the impression that this was a civil war that started around 1990. He said the general picture was clear. The people in the Liberian government, led by Charles Taylor, were the bad guy. The international community was the good guy. But he's trying to tell us, actually, the international community they were the bad guy. For some of us, we know it already, and we have spoken against it as a Pan-Africanist. All right? But let's continue here. He says the international community was a good guy seeking to help and protect the civilian population. The rebel Liberia United for Reconciliation and Democracy law fell somewhere in between. Let's continue here. While living and working in Monrovia, I soon came to realize that the conflict was primarily between the Liberian government and the United States government. Let me read that part again. For me, I know it. For some of us, we know it already because we read from different sources. All right? We know it. But I'm just saying this for the Liberian folks out there who still believe in a so-called, how they call it, American or Democrats, or who still believe in a so-called American diplomatic relationship with Liberia. He said, while living and working in Monrovia, meanwhile, this man was a missionary, okay, working with Médecins Sans Frontières. He had to abandon his job to come out with the true story of what happened in Liberia. Because he saw how people suffer, how that country has been tortured, humiliated. He had to abandon his job as a missionary to write the true story instead of it being whitewashed. As a white man, as a European, he put his life on the line. And this man was threatened in the first place when the book came out. But let's continue here. He said, while living and working in Monrovia, I soon came to realize that the conflict was primarily between the Liberian government and the United States government. Didn't I tell you about Turbo? When he started branching out to other nations like Russia. We'll see here. Let's continue here. Who are those? Let's continue here. All right. So the question then becomes, why would the United States want to fight the Liberian government? Why? Let's continue here. Let's continue. France was also involved, seeking to expand its sphere of influence from the neighboring Ivory Coast into Liberia. Now, again, remember, 1847 when Liberia came on independence from the video, you heard in the video, right? Now, the Liberian so-called independence started, how they call it, going outside, getting partnership with France, getting partnership with Great Britain. America did not want it. Because America said, you are our colony. That's why America did not recognize the independence. But France recognized the independence not because it was in the Liberian people's interest. It was in France's interest because Liberia will now go and make deal with France. Because Liberia, that tiny country, is very rich in mineral resources. So France accepted the independence not because it was in our favor. It was in France's favor because now Liberia don't have to take order from the United States because Liberia was not a so-called colony, so-called they were free. They could now go and make deal with France, and France could now come in Liberia and take advantage. Great Britain accepted the independence not because it was in Liberian people's interest, but in the interest of Great Britain, because Great Britain could not come and have deal with Liberia to exploit the Liberian resources. America said it's not going to happen. And when America said it's not going to happen, it wasn't because it was in the Liberian people's interests. America was fighting for interest as well. To let go of France and Great Britain in Liberia, because that was a colony. If anybody is to benefit from the resources of Liberia, it has to be America and not Great Britain and not France, because those people had their colony that America was not benefiting from, or America was not making deal. And in 1862, the only reason why America accepted that deal or accepted a so-called independent, I don't honor it, I don't classify it as independent, but the reason why America accepted in 1862, it was because it was now totally under the control of the U.S. It was not under the control of nobody until the 1980, when Turbo decided again to change. The America wake up again with an attitude of conflict. Let's continue here. Let's continue. Let's continue. France was also involved, seeking to expand its sphere of influence from the neighboring Ivory Coast into Liberia. To the west, in Sierra Leone, which is the Great Britain or Britain, the Revolutionary United Front has challenged the balance of power with external coverage support, external also influence. Now you understand the war that was in Liberia, right? It was not a damn civil war that was fought in Liberia. Let's continue here. Let's continue. Where I am. Let's continue here. Okay, coverage support. Now, several military intervention from the United States. Listen here. Several military intervention has taken place, including the deployment of a large UN peacekeeping force. In addition to this, Great Britain has also deployed its soldiers to secure British interest in Liberia, folks. In Liberia. So now, Great Britain have deployed a soldier too. France have deployed a soldier too. Okay? So that's how the war was coming now. Let's continue here. This was not a civil war. Somehow we know it. But let's continue and see what went on in our Liberia then. Let's see who was behind the war and say, you know what? If they would die, they would die, but we have to get our colony back. Okay? That is what's still going on today, when a war bear has set a bait for Liberia. And we know who control the war band. Let's continue here. Because America is still fighting to gain her colony. Because her colony was slipping from her hand. Let's continue here. Let's continue. Where I am? Right here. Okay, let's go ahead. In addition to this, Britain has also deployed a soldier to secure British interests. To the north, Guinea was hosting and training the law, which was Ivory Coast people, how they call it, not Ivory Coast, Guinea, which was France. Okay? So now you see here how the war started, or how the war was going on in Liberia, right? So these people were not, sorry folks, let me get my pen. Now, all this training that was going on, they were not local people who just wake up and went and became part of Great Britain. They were not local people who just wake up and went and became part of France and start training people. That's how the United States government was able to free Charles Taylor from jail and send Charles Taylor away. So during this time period, what was taking place here now? During this time period, Samuel K. Doe have turned away from the United States and was now going with the Thurber policy. That's why when you do your research, you will come across some video, you will see Doe speaking. Doe said, I have now come to realize and I want to take the decision of Thurber. And even in that video, he was begging Charles Taylor not to come to kill him or not to bring war. And he said, America has betrayed me. And even in that video, he even explained further by saying, Doe. He said, I have asked America for Liberia to be stable on her own. America said no. He said, I have asked America for us to produce our own car. Said we are producing iron ore. And America said no. And he went as far as saying, he told America, okay, since that's the case, we can produce the car frame. And the engine be produced in America. And then you sell the engine and then we put it in the car. Say you don't want us to be too that smart. America said no. Now, America said, this idiots is now becoming smart. We have to take him out. That's how they took Charles Taylor from jail. Because at that time, Doe was now turning away from the United States and going to other countries now. In this country, they now start bringing a military to secure their nation interests. Let's continue here. Let's go ahead. Let's continue here. Because before that time, around the 1926, bear in mind, the United States also took France and Great Britain to the UN. Okay? Over the same fighting of over Liberia. And this time around, we are talking about around in the 1980s. Now already, going to the 1990s, right? Now, let's continue here. Let's continue here. We have a great partner called the United States. The United States and Liberia have a diplomatic relationship. Yes, they have a diplomatic relationship. Let's continue here. That's the kind of diplomatic relationship the United States and America have. Let's continue here. Let's go ahead. Now, where I am. Where I am. Okay. Law, rebel. Okay. Now, let's go here. In addition to this, Britain has also deployed its soldier to secure British interests. To the north, Guinea was hosting and training the Law rebel near the border to Liberia. Most other countries in the region such as Burkina Faso, who was controlled by the French. Okay, Burkina Faso, Ghana, who was controlled by the British. They were also training people in Ghana there. Okay, Libya. Now, in Libya, who were in Libya? At that time, when America freed Charles Taylor from jail and they sent Charles Taylor in Liberia, Charles Taylor was in Libya and was supporting Charles Taylor with ammunition, and Charles Taylor was training people. And that's how the Liberian, who also had grudge for Doe, because Doe killed their people in firing squad. That's how majority of the Liberian left and went to Libya and they were trained. So you see how America do her job. Okay, so Libya, okay, and Nigeria. That's why during the war in Liberia, ECOWAS couldn't do nothing, AU couldn't do nothing, because the United States, in fact, when you do your research, in all our research again, it will tell you the United States bought AU, the United States bought ECOWAS, and they told ECOWAS not to intervene. They told AU not to intervene. The United States told AU and ECOWAS, you will intervene when we're ready. It was the United States in all our research, when you will see it there. It was the United States. The United States told them, when we are ready, we will dare you to go in. But do not go there. You see how they did to Niger? That's what they did to Liberia. But it's just that the Nigerians stood out. The entire Africa stood out. But if now ECOWAS was going to invade Niger, that's what they did to Liberia. ECOWAS take her back when thousands of Liberians died. And when Liberians said we are tired of dying in numbers, before now America came in with their so-called UN peace. Before now America told ECOWAS to go in for peace. Before now America told AU to go in for peace. Because at that time now, they knew we have died. We have destroyed the country. Something was not even there. They knew at that time we were succumbed to the US now. They knew at that time we needed financial support. And France will not give it to us. British will not give it to us. But then the United States will give it to us. At that time, they knew we have already drowned. We have left in the water. Anything that come on our way for rescue, we will accept it. Let's continue here. Let's move on. Let's move on. Now, most Liberian countries in a region, such as Burkina Faso, or let's say most other countries in a region, such as Burkina Faso, Guinea, Libya, and Nigeria, were also involved in the war in Liberia, along with several other European and Asian countries. That's why ECOWAS did not do nothing. They sat down there. They watched 350,000 or 250,000, as they said, that died. Let's continue here. It was often difficult to know who supported whom, and alliances shifted over time. It was clear, however, that the war in Liberia was not a civil war. How can this be a civil war when the British army was there, the French army was there, okay, and then they training people in Libya, training people in Africa, in Guinea, in Ghana, in Nigeria, in Burkina Faso, by all these colonizers, by all these slave masters. How was it a civil war? Where Liberian people fought their money with primitive weapons? Where these modern weapons came from? But let's continue here. It was never a damn civil war. Let's continue here. It was often difficult to know who supported whom, and alliances shifted over time. It was clear, however, that the war in Liberia was not a civil war. Okay, if it wasn't a civil war, what was it? Let's continue. It was not a civil war, as most commonly described. That's how people think it was a civil war. Because at the end of the day, it was Liberia that was fighting. It was Liberia that was killing one another. But if you do your research, you will come to understand. Let's continue. If it was not a civil war, then what was it? Let's continue. As most commonly described. Now, it says it was an international war fought primarily on Liberian soil. It was an international war primarily fought on Liberian soil. Several inequality within Liberia. Now, The writer is trying to explain. Okay? The reason why people think it was a civil war, because already there was inequality in the country. There was, the hate was already being built out since 1847. The hate was already being built out against each other. Okay? There was the conflict between America and Liberia. There was power struggle already. Okay? And the native people, there was power struggle already. So people use the narrative of that power struggle to say it was because of this, it was because of rice, it was because of this war went in Liberia. That war took ammunition, that rice took ammunition, American weapon across the sea. That rice took American weapon across the seas, Russian weapon across the seas into ship to Liberia. Let's continue here. Where we are now, it was an international war primarily fought on Liberian soil. Several inequality within Liberian society combined with poverty, class division, and religion and ethnic grouping made the country vulnerable to destabilization, which provided an opportunity for local actors to work in close collaboration with foreign power. That's how, for example, President Johnson, they were able to work with foreign power like the United States to kill Dole, because there was conflict in there when Gil people said it was Dole that killed their people. That's what he's saying here. Because these local issues among us rise already, and it gave a breeding ground for internal influence. Let's continue here. Now, let's continue here. Where it says, okay, so class division and religion and ethnic grouping made the country vulnerable to destabilization, which provided an opportunity for local actors to work in close collaboration with foreign powers and challenge U.S. influence in Liberia. The struggle for power among foreign nations in the West African states has frequently sent a troop to Liberia to regain control of the country. That is the United States now they are talking about. All right, the struggle for power among foreign nations in the West African nation, which is Liberia, okay, it's not new. The struggle for power among foreign nations in the West African region, which is Liberia, is not new. And over the past 2 centuries, the United States has frequently sent a troop to Liberia to regain control of the country. Now, that is 2023. If the United States cannot send her army, she's so sophisticated now that she knows what kind of strategy to use to still gain control over that nation. The World Bank has set a bid again for the newly elected president of Liberia. Are you connecting with me? Let's continue here. Let me read again here. All right? Let me read here again. The struggle for power among foreign nations in the West African region is not new. Over the past 2 centuries, the United States has frequently sent a troop to Liberia to regain control of the country. Through diplomatic, economic, cultural, and military means, the United States has set limits up on foreign power in Liberia. Let me read that again. Through diplomatic, economic, cultural, and military means, the United States has set limit. Not the Liberian government, but the United States has set limit upon foreign power in Liberia. That means the United States has set limit who Liberia should friendship, who Liberia should tie with, and who Liberia should not tie with. Who Liberia should make friend with, and who Liberia should not make friend with. And that is, even before Liberia make friend with any nation, the United States had to approve. Is that not a colony? Is that the ACS? Is this the ACS or the United States government? Now go and define what a colony is. You can't tell me Liberia was not a colony. America is still fighting for a colony. She has fought over this colony, not for a good reason, for the benefit of the Liberian people, but for a good reason, for the benefit of the American hierarchies. The slave owner, the colonizer. Let's continue here. Let's continue here. It says, through diplomatic, economic, cultural, and military means, the United States has set limits upon a foreign power in Liberia. Discipline or remove Liberian government and enforce relative peace in the country. When I say relative peace, what I mean? Relative peace is not peace. Because there is nothing like relative peace. If you have relative peace, you are at war. If you have relative peace, you don't control your own thing, your own resources, your own life, your own nation. You don't control your land. You don't control your sea. If you have relative peace, you don't make decisions. If you have relative peace. This is Liberia. That's the kind of relationship, toxic diplomatic relationship. When they say Liberia and America have diplomatic relationship, that's the kind of toxic diplomatic relationship America have with Liberia. Let's continue here. Liberia is the country in West Africa, or is a country in Africa where the United States has the most extended history of military engagement. And each intervention, and let me tell you, in this military engagement, Liberia is being used to carry operation in other African regions. So that is what it's saying. Liberia is a country in Africa that America have the most extended history of military engagement. And each intervention is layered on the experience of previous intervention, on the experience of previous interventions. Like what we are coming to read today with the World Bank. So they are becoming sophisticated from time to time. Or how to destabilize this country. How to give this country relative peace. Let's continue here. Let's continue. Where I am. Okay. Over the years, the intervention has become more comprehensive. Over the year, the United States government intervention in Liberia has become more comprehensive and sophisticated. And Liberia can be considered an essential case for the general study of U.S. military intervention in Africa. Let's continue here. Let's go to the introduction. All right? Let's see something here. Let's go to the introduction. Come and see something here with me. Come with me. Now, introduction. Come with me here. Introduction. Okay? See something here with me. Where I am. Where's the book? Come up. Now, it's the introduction. This book reviewed the history of United States Liberia relation from where? From around the 1820s. Now, from around the 1820s to 2015. This book reviewed the history of the United States Liberia, between the United States and Liberia relationship from around the 1820s to 2015. The video we just watched, right? This book going way back there. Now, the reason why the writer took it to 1820, You can just go read about Liberia and just join in Liberia and just talk about, oh, the free slave. No, you have to start from here. First of all, why those people were taken to Liberia? What was the reason? Was it because the white men loved them so dearly, or the colonizer loved them so dearly, or the European loved them so dearly, or the enslaver loved them so dearly? If they loved them, this was 1820. Why did they not abolish slavery in the same 1820, but they waited until 1865? And then when they abolished it, another 100 years of captivity, Jim Crow law. Let's continue here. This book reviewed the history of United States-Liberia relation from around the 1820s to 2015, with particular attention paid to the role of the United States Armed Forces. With particular attention paid to the role of the United States Armed Forces. Let's continue here. Contrary to most literature on the genesis and development of Liberia, listen to this. Contrary to most literature on the genesis and development of Liberia, this book demonstrates how United States military or army power has been the primary influence shaping the Liberian state. Let me read that again. Contrary to most literature will lie to you. That's what he's trying to say. Most literature will be whitewashed. That's what he's trying to say. Most literature will come and tell you the Liberian people are their own problem. They are corrupt. They are this. That's what he's trying to say. Most literature will come and tell you Liberia was founded as a place that America loved the American Liberians so much that America sent them there. America went and created so free slaves can go. That's what he's trying to say. Contrary to most literature on the genesis and development of Liberia, this book demonstrates how U.S. military power has been the primary influence shaping the Liberian state. Let's continue. This includes the role played by the United States military in the funding of Liberia. Who said ACS funded Liberia? Who said the so-called ACS funded Liberia? The United States government funded Liberia. The United States government took Liberia as a colony. Not the ACS. ACS came into the picture a little down the line, where churches and private, how they call it, slave holder wanted to be part, because private slave holder, their slaves were rebelling against them. So at that time they called these people free slaves. They were not free. They called them rebellious slaves. Let's get the history facts. Let's get the history clear here. They did not love them. It was not out of love they sent these people to Liberia or to Africa. It was out of hate, because they said these people could not contribute to the American economy. It was out of hate they sent these people to Liberia or to Africa. And they send them there so that they can be productive and useful to the enslaver, to the colonizer, to the American economy. And that's what happened. It was not out of love they sent them there. Let's continue here. That is why the Israeli Prime Minister said the generation of the Black American are the problem. Because whenever we are waking up, we become the problem. Let's continue here. Let's continue here. Where we are, I'm right here. I'm right here. Where we are here. Let me read it again to connect the dots. All right? Now, let me read here. Where we are. Okay. This includes the role played by the U.S. military in the funding of Liberia, the protection of the country during the European former colonial era. Now, maybe some of you don't understand this. Let me read that and I will explain to you what I mean by during the European former colonial era. As you have seen that from the narrative I have explained, I'm just going to connect you to what we have already explained and what it meant by during the European former colonial era. In 1926, I told you, before the Harvey Firestone, America took France and Great Britain to Switzerland, Geneva, right? Now, and we have already come to understand, to explain how the war started in Liberia, with different countries coming in Liberia, putting a military base there. Where America was losing her influence, right? Because of these colonial entity, her colonial entity that was coming into Liberia, and she did not like it. And up to today, so you see, was it the ACS stay over Liberia? We are talking about a system that was created, a system that depleted, that is still depleting our country resources and aid people. A nation that is deceiving when it comes to the development, when it comes to the improvement, when it comes to liberation of the Liberian people. We are talking about that system. Let's continue here. Let's read on. This includes a role played by the U.S. military in the funding of Liberia, the protection of the country during the European former colonial era, multiple covert operations in securing U.S.-friendly administration in Liberia, and direct military intervention, like the war that went in Liberia with American ammunition that killed Liberia and destroyed Liberia. And direct military intervention when necessary to secure American interests in the region. Did they say to secure Liberian interests? Did they say to protect Liberian people? No. When necessary to secure American interests in the region. The World Bank has set a bait for the newly elected president of Liberia. Be with me now. We are getting somewhere. All right? Be with me. Let's continue here. This book is predominantly based on primary sources. A document and interview that are as close to the primary sources as possible. Based on these sources, it is showing that Liberia was the most crucial American foothold in Africa for more than a century. The frequent visit by the U.S. Navy, in combination with a comprehensive military strategy for the country, provided the fundamental security structure necessary for the development of improvement economic activities. For example, in 1926, Firestone Rubber Company established one of the world's most expensive rubber plantations in Liberia in order to break the British rubber monopolies, thus securing reliable support or supply of rubber to the U.S. armed forces and industry. Equally important, in 1948, former U.S. Secretary of State Edward Setinius Jr. established the Liberian Registry, which became one of the largest offshore ships registered in the world, allowing sensitive goods to be shipped directly across the whole world, providing economic advantage to shipping company. During that time period, the seaport of Liberia. So this is where the $1 billion they talk about in previous video that America spent in Liberia, or America gave to Liberian government. These are the places it went. For example, like the seaport. The seaport was not there in the interest of Liberia. In fact, as it says to us, the seaport was created, okay, but a former U.S. Secretary General or a former U.S. Secretary of State, Edward Satinus Jr. He was the one that established the Liberia Registry. Now, it was registered under them. They were benefiting from it. They were getting millions of dollars. They were getting billions of dollars. And it was not going to the Liberian public. It was going to the few handful of elites. Some of the money was going to them. And the rest was coming to America, into the American economy. While Liberia was in poverty, dying. Nothing in the country. No good health care. No good educational facility. So what we are experiencing today, it is something that was perpetuated on us by the American government and the colonizer and the enslaver and the so-called churches. Let's continue here. During World War II, the Cold War, the U.S. government established many critical military facilities in Liberia. The U.S. government established many critical military facilities in Liberia. Was that in the interest of Liberia? No. It was in the interest of America to fight for World War II. Secret bases. Let's continue here. This included a significant air base, Robert F. E., a deep sea port, several training camps, and center for military and intelligence personnel. The U.S. diplomatic and intelligence communication relay station for U.S. bases in Africa and West Asia. So Liberia was used, okay, as a station for all the bases America have in the world, both in Asia and Africa. Liberia was a headquarters. But let's continue here. Now we are coming to why the war came in Liberia, right? We are getting to a point. Be with me, bear with me, come with me. Now, where I was. The U.S. diplomatic and intelligence communication relay station for U.S. bases in Africa and West Asia. Two powerful voice of America radio transmitter to cover the African continent, and one of the six antenna for the Omega Global Navigation System, later made redundant by and replaced by the Global Positioning System. Now listen to this. The U.S. gradually lost access to these strategic facilities as notion of socialist-oriented pan-Africanist influence Liberian intellectual and politician in the 1960s. Now again, let's go back to the African American or the slave. Now you see here, right? When pan-Africanists from the diaspora and doing around this time period, now we are talking about the 1960s. We are talking about the 1960, right? The 1960. The 1960 was the movement, the uprising movement of Pan-Africanism on the African continent, also within the diaspora. That was a time period African nations were fighting to gain independence. So again, it was a problem to the American influence in Liberia. That's why you see the Moravian group was against the unification of Liberia. And the Moravian group stood firm because they were protecting their colonial master, the USA. So during that time period, the colonizer, the enslaver America, did not like during this time period in 1960. So let's continue here and say the U.S. gradually lost access to these strategic facilities as notion of socialist-oriented pan-Africanism influence Liberian intellectual and politician in the 1960s. Who were those Liberian intellectual and politicians in the 1960s? Some of those were the American Liberians specifically, who were not influenced by people like Nkrumah, Jomo Kenyatta, by people like Julian Yarin, people like Amita Cabral, who these people influenced them in the 1960s. And we are making them to be Pan-Africanism. So they were giving them new education versus the education that was given to them by the American government. They now educated them like, look, we are African, we are one. We are fighting the same people, they are colonizers. Why are you with them? They were becoming smart. This now was the beginning of the war. This now was the beginning of removing Turbo. This now was the beginning of CIA to assassinate Turbo. We are talking about a time period of Turbo now, coming on, right? Now, this time around, Tubman was still in power because Tubman died around the 1970s. But during this time period, right, Liberia was now being introduced to Pan-Africanism. Let's continue here. Now, let's continue here. Okay, this early notion of Pan-Africanism oriented in the United States around the mid 18th century and developed in Liberia and Sierra Leone throughout the 19th century. In the latter half of the 20th century, Pan-Africanism developed into a significant social force that was an essential component of the African independent movement. Essential component of the African independent movement. The interests of the independent and Pan-African movement cover where the interests that means it disturbs the American interests. But let's listen here. Cover with the interests of the U.S. government regarding breaking up the former European colonial structure in Africa. And they did not want that to happen. However, Pan-Africanism turned against U.S. interests in Liberia. Now you understand why Turbo was killed in the 1970s. Now you understand who killed Turbo. Now you understand who killed Turbo. All these things when I said don't kill Turbo, though they not know anything that was going on about Pan-Africanism whatsoever. He was just a common high school dropper, a master sergeant. But let's continue here. Now you see the reason why the CIA killed Turbo. Let's continue here. Pan-Africanism turned against U.S. interest in Liberia in the 1970s when the Liberian government imposed restriction on U.S. businesses' activities and access to military facilities, while also establishing relations with the Russia, USSR, and the People's Republic of China. This was not Turbo. That's the time the CIA went, get Turbo. And today, we are seeing that same thing being repeated. But because they cannot go in with the CIA to assassinate, they are using the World Bank. The World Bank has set a bid for the newly elected government. And that newly elected government will fall in it. I say it here. It will catch the newly elected government. They will fall in it. They will sell our nation. They will sell our land. They will sell our resources. They will sell our mountain to the World Bank. That I say it here is going to happen. They will do it. I will come here tomorrow and I will tell you, I told you, and they finish doing it. And I will show you the evidence here tomorrow when it happens. I will show you it here. So now you understand the war that went in Liberia. Now you understand the beginning of the war that went in Liberia. America does not want to have any competition with any nation in Liberia. America wants to claim and own Liberia. If Liberia will be in captivity, in poverty, Liberia will be. While America continue to loot our resources. While America continue to take advantage of that nation, they don't care. Let's continue here. This restriction on U.S. businesses and military base and closer relation with the USSR and China resulted in several U.S. cover and overt military operations in Liberia that removed three government from power between 1980 and 2003. Now you understand who removed Taba. You understand who removed Door. You understand who removed Chastera. That's what it's saying here from 1990 to 2003. They killed Taba. They killed Door. And they removed Chastera. Those are the three government they are talking about. During the period, let's read here. These restrictions on U.S. businesses and military bases closer and closer relationship with the USSR and China resulted in several U.S. covert and overt military operations in Liberia that removed three governments from power between 1980 and 2003. During this period, the U.S. government did not succeed in securing a long-term stable U.S.-friendly government in Liberia. From 1990 to 2003, the country experienced full-scale war involving more than 15 nation-states, most significantly Britain, Burkina Faso, France, Guinea, Ghana, Africa, Libya, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and the United States. The United States know that Chastera know everything about her dirty hand that was in Liberia. That's why they did not charge Chastera for the crime committed in Liberia, but rather they charged Chastera for a near crime committed in Sierra Leone. And the reason why they did that, because they knew if they keep Chastera out, Chastera will infiltrate or will be a threat to American interests in Liberia, because Chastera will still be a force. Chastera will still be a force in the decision making of Liberia. So they fought hard to use Sierra Leone as a scapegoat to put Chastera in jail. If America loved Liberia so much, why would she want to prosecute Chastera for a crime committed in Sierra Leone? Why the British did not prosecute Chastera for the Sierra Leonean? Because the British or Sierra Leone was a colony to Great Britain. Why Great Britain did not go fight for Sierra Leone, but the United States have to go fight for Sierra Leone? Why Great Britain could not fight for a colony, why America fought for her colony in Liberia? Because America knows that if you fight for Liberia in terms of the war in Liberia, her secret will come out. Because she have a dirty hand that was fought in a war, in Liberia. Why would she want to go fight for another person colony, but leave her colony if we have to speak reality here? Why would she want to go fight for Sierra Leone? Why Great Britain did not fight for Sierra Leone to indict Chastera, but why America fought hard to indict Chastera? And America did not fight for Liberia because she knows it's dead right. She too will be part. She too will be in a court to answer question. Because sometimes they interview Chastera in Liberia. Chastera said, wait for my book. Let my book come out. I don't want to say everything here. It will be in my book, and I will tell you who are involved in our war. Because the country that you see as heaven, as Jesus, as the Savior, that country is dirty. It was a threat to keep Chastera out. And he fought hard. They took him here. And the naive Liberians, some of them, they will sit down there, Chastera is in a hedge for a crime committed. No, Chastera is not in a hedge for a crime committed in Liberia. It was a plot against Chastera for your interest, for you not to know the truth. Let's continue here. The war in Liberia created opportunity for other states, particularly France, to challenge the U.S. interest in Liberia. That's what making an international conflict was not a civil war. Let's read again. The war in Liberia created opportunity for other states, particularly France, to challenge U.S. interest in Liberia. And the United States, in return, challenged France interest in the Ivory Coast. During the 1990 war or during the 1990s, numerous civil society groups were organized, armed, and trained for unconventional warfare, and national army from neighboring countries were sent to Liberia directly or indirectly under U.S. command, directly or indirectly under U.S. command. What make it a civil war? Don't tell me that nonsense that the war in Liberia was a civil war. Let's continue. As war erupted in Sierra Leone and the Ivory Coast, the conflict environment became increasingly complicated. Around the end of the 1990s, UN military forces were gradually increased in the region. And you can find that in the United Nations chapter VII, I think chapter 7 or so. Let's continue here. In the latter half of 2003, UN military intervention took place in Liberia under U.S. military command. I told you people, the U.S. bought ECWA, the U.S. bought AU, and they told them not to intervene in the war in Liberia. They told them when we're ready, when the United States ready for peace to go in Liberia, we will call you, we will let you know. That's the evidence that you see right in the reading here. In the late half of 2003, UN military intervention took place in Liberia under U.S. military command, followed by comprehensive reconstruction program. So even as UN went in on the demand of the United States government, UN could not have gone there. So US sat down and watched Liberia to die. US told ECWA not to step in. US told AU not to step in. They told them you will only go in when we're ready. Washington DC told them you will only go in Liberia for peacekeeping when we're ready. Let them die. Let them kill themselves. We will support them with ammunition because they do not like American interests. Because they go against American interests, we will punish them. They will die. So when they were ready in 2003, after we have killed one another, after the country have, depleted, we were all tired. They saw in our faces that now anything the United States tell us, we will do it. That's the time the United States sent someone. That's the time the United States sent someone in Liberia. That's the time UN went in with the command of the United States. Imagine. I thought the UN is a war body organization. I thought the UN is a war body army. I thought the UN is a war body entity. Listen to me, folks. Just like the UN to America, it is the same way the World Bank to America. Just like the UN to America, the same way the World Bank to America. Let's continue here. We'll soon finish with it, and then we'll get to the other article about the World Bank. Let's finish with this quick. We'll soon finish with this. Now, in the latter half, UN military intervention took place in Liberia under U.S. military command, followed by a comprehensive reconstruction program. By May 2004, Liberia was under a de facto U.S. administration. By 2004, Liberia was under de facto U.S. administration. Didn't I say it? America told them, when we feel that Liberia will succumb to us, when we feel that Liberia will listen to us, when we feel that our colony will come back to us, then peace will go. So by 2004, Liberia then came back to the U.S. as a de facto nation, as a de facto U.S. administration. Let's continue here. The armed forces of Liberia were dismantled and rebuilt under the supervision of the U.S. Department of Defense. Rebuilt under the supervision of the U.S. Department of Defense. So all the men Tobo sent to the USSR, all of them, they say, we want you. Because if they allow them, some of those people were still alive. They could have come, or they could have been there to train the Liberian army. So let's continue here. America fully got her colony back. Let's continue here. Let's continue here. All right. Let's continue here. Under the supervision of the U.S. Department of Defense. Now, foreign experts indirectly approved by U.S. government were deployed, indirectly approved by the U.S. government, approved by the U.S. government, approved by the U.S. government, were deployed in key control point of Liberian government administration with the power to sign off on important decisions. A colony. That's what a colony is. That's what a de facto nation is. Let's continue. This form of intervention in the short term being effective, but in the long term, it may result in new armed conflict and regional terrorism. So the rhetoric here now was speaking in the future, like this kind of relationship between America and Liberia, it will continue with different form again of conflict. It will continue with different form of conflict as long as the Liberian people want to move up, as long as the Liberian people want to partner with other nations, as long as the Liberian people taste development, or as long as Liberian people taste any other thing that will bring prosperity to their nation that America is not producing, it will bring problem. So he was quoting for the future. But let's continue here. The intervention stopped the war, disarmed the Belgian forces, and restore the infrastructure for economic development. However, the recent U.S. control of the Liberian military and economic structure is just the latest in a series of similar U.S. intervention throughout the history of Liberia, which were fiercely resisted by the local and regional actors for various reasons, as an exam in this book. Okay, we'll take this from here, but it's actually long, 381 pages. But now, right, we're going to take this out. Okay, now the point here is you have seen the history of Liberia when it comes to Liberia and America, right? You have seen what have been played on. You have seen, the argument, oh, African American did this, the American Liberian went Liberia, they did this. Now you have seen they were not even free slaves. These people were not slaves. They were not free. They were still slaves. They were slaves. They were rebellious slaves. They were not producing to the American economy. They went against James Monroe and they killed all their leaders. It was the followers that is sent to Liberia. And Liberia was never founded as a place to carry free slaves. It was founded as a place for America to have a colony to exploit, to bring more economic value to the American, economy in America here, to the American elite, to the American colonizer, to the American enslaver, to the slaveholder. Okay? That's what Liberia was founded for. So you see the relationship between them, right? Now, even in that article, as you read follow down, it will tell you about the war, even about Charles Taylor, you saw it, the National Patriotic Force, the NPFL, that was funded by the American government, spearheaded by Charles Taylor. But later they got to know that they did not believe in Charles Taylor. They did not believe that this man, they believe that he's a con artist. He may not do what we say he had to do. When he can't do, he may not come back, because the plan was for Charles Taylor to go and kill and return back to the U.S. for Ellen Johnson said he to come become president. That was the plan. But they saw that Charles Taylor was a con artist. They did not trust him. That's how the United States came out again with the RNPFL. They built it. They came out of that, and they put Prince Johnson as the leader. And Prince Johnson went and killed Doe. So you see how it been playing. Now, let's get to the article. So you see the relationship, right? Let's get to the article. of the World Bank and see and tell you the United States is so sophisticated in dealing with Liberia. Now, it said Daily Observer, right? It says World Bank suspend Liberia access to loan. World Bank suspend Liberia access to loan. Now, first of all, we as Pan-Africanists, this we will say is good for Liberia. It's in the interest of Liberia. But the fact is that it is not a Pan-African who is in power. It is not a Pan-Africanist who is in power. So it's not good for Liberia. In as much as we see it and we think that it's good for Liberia, because I think for some reason it is a freedom. Because we don't have to go, how to call it, borrow money from the World Bank. We got resources that we can make business with our nation. But again, we are Pan-Africanists. These people that are coming into power, they are not Pan-Africanists. They are dummy. They are dumb. So they are going to make stupid decisions and fall into this trap. But let's continue here. So now, the reason why they suspended Liberia from borrowing loan or from accessing loan from the colonizer is because the elected president, the elected government who will be taking office sometime in January, right? He was once a vice president to Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, I believe, from 2005 to 2017. They went for 2 terms. Within their 2 terms, they borrowed huge money from the World Bank. Huge money from the World Bank. And they did not put that money into the Liberian economy to benefit the Liberian people. They corrupted those money. They took that money and they paid government officials. They bribed government officials to close their mouth. And they bribed other media outlets to close their mouth. And they took that money, they shared among themselves. They created businesses into other countries. And they put some of those money into their children and grandchildren account. Okay? Now, the current government, which is President George Manuel Weah, who will be leaving office, who just got defeated, who will be leaving office, and by his defeat, it involves a whole lot of stuff again. Okay? Now, the stuff involved, I will come into some of that. That even I encountered some of them. All right? Now, he will be leaving office. So when he got in power, he was paying some of this loan, a loan that was taken by previous government, who did nothing. So when Josh Weah came, he was paying some of this loan. But later on, opposition, who is Joseph Yuma Boakai, who then now become president, right? He went ahead. He knew what it did. But he kept saying he will audit President George Weah. He kept saying President George Weah was corrupt. He kept saying President George Weah was spending the Liberian people money going to watch his son to play soccer. Those were the kind of nasty politics they play. But not knowing that politics will catch up onto them. Because they lied to the Liberian people. And now because they lied to the Liberian people, that politics have caught up to them. Guess what here? Listen right here. World Bank, right? You see here. Now, we sincerely hope that all such payment will be clear soon to allow the resumption of withdrawal for the execution of the important operation the bank has been supporting. Diagonal's letter to the Ministry of Finance dated November 15th. Noted. Now let's continue here. The World Bank has suspended Liberia from accessing on withdrawal loan due to the failure of President George Weah administration to service previously disbursed loans. Previously. Now, This loan was not taken by President Weah. This loan was taken by Joseph Imam Bouaka and Ellen Johnson Sirleaf 12 years. Now, the current government, they are saying the current government failed to service the previous loan, the previous loan that was disbursed to Liberia during Joseph Imam Bouaka and Ellen Johnson Sirleaf 12 years. So you see, the bad politics Joseph Imam Bouaka played to remove George Weah. He said he was going to audit George Weah. Now that we see if he actually going to audit George Weah, because trap have already been set for him. Now, folks, listen to this. The issue here is George Weah will be going in January by January 20. Now, Joseph Imam Bouaka, the money that was taken, that the World Bank gave to them, and they did not give any good account of it during their 12 years of administration. They did not use it for the Liberian people, no development in the country. For the money, the billions of dollars they took from World Bank. Now, World Bank has suspended Liberia from loan that was taken from Joseph Imam Bouaka, the president-elect, along with Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. Now the World Bank has suspended Liberia right from. For me, it's in my favor. But here it is. Here it is. You know, during Ellen Johnson Sirleaf administration, during her last term, coming to 2014-15, right? This is what happened. At that time, around that time period, around 2014, 2015, 2013, 2014, I was still working with the House of Representatives with one representative, Marco Davidson, at that time. So she has sent me to represent her somewhere. I'm giving you a story that will allow with this, right? She sent me to represent her somewhere. And when I went, I did my connection. I did my own private connection. I represented her, represented the district, the Upper Darby district, right? The 164. She was the representative at that time for the 164 district. I did that, everything. I get report back to the office, and I made my own private connection. Now, and the connection that I made was with the Delaware Community College president at that time. Maybe he's still the president, but he's called James. And this guy, his son, at that time was in Liberia, okay, as a CIA or whatsoever spies. He was in the Marine at that time. So his duty in Liberia at that time was to monitor Ellen Johnson Sirleaf government. And as he monitored Ellen Johnson Sirleaf government, he was giving all necessary reports to the United States government. And the monitor he was doing, it was not because of, he was not monitoring like for World Bank. No, he was monitoring people that Ellen Johnson Sirleaf was making business with. Like, I mean, other nations. And he saw everything, and he came back. And he told the United States government, and he also told his father, of course. So now, I met his father now, and then I sent him letters. Let's say I wrote an email about business that I wanted to do with him. I wanted, like, you know, every year, these universities or colleges, they change their book, right? And then they get a new book. So I went to him to do business with him, and I said, I want to send books, you know, university or colleges book to my university in Liberia, or, you know, public university there, or AU. So when I went to meet him, we sat down, we have a conversation, we lecture. I went for business, and I told him my business, what I went for, right? And he said to me, he left what I told him. This guy started talking about Ellen Johnson said he started talking about politics. How Ellen Johnson said he betrayed American investor. How Ellen Johnson said he betrayed American interest in Liberia. How Ellen Johnson said he is now partnering with China. How Ellen Johnson Sirleaf is giving business deal with China, and China is now having more influence in Liberia. I mean, he went on and on and on and on and on. I was like, oh my God, I'm here for business, and this man brought politics to me. So I just sat out there and looked at him. After he finished talking, and then I said to him, sir, I'm here for a business. This is what I came for, and this is what I said. Are we going to get into it? And then he said to me, oh, somebody already, came here. We already have a deal struck out with that person. That was it. So what I'm saying here is, let's go back to the article. Where's the article here? Okay. What I'm trying to say here is, from what we have seen, right, from the video, from the other previous article, where they said the United States use militarism, the United States use of army, the United States, is so sophisticated, okay, and she used strategy on how to get Liberia. So then what happened here when we came in, we are continuing with the relationship with France. And not only that, we are also continuing with relationship with other nations, because when he was a soccer player, he have already made his connection with other nations. So now we are came in, his connection with other nations, he began to bring them into Liberia to partnership with them to help him with the administration. That did not go on well with America, and that's how in the Liberian society, okay, in the Liberian community, you will hear Liberians say, oh, George Weah administration, the United States government did not like Weah. The United States government did not invite President Weah. That was the reason. Because President Weah came and continued with the relationship with China, and at the same time brought in other people like Dubai, okay, like the Middle East, like Dubai or United Arab Emirates. He started working on those people, and they started bearing roles in the nation. Meanwhile, America being our so-called diplomatic partner since 1822 and no role in the country. But America looted our iron ore, looted our resources, looted our uranium, looted our gold, looted our diamond to build our infrastructure, while our roads was like that. So now, the money that was taking, the loan that was taken by Joseph Iman Boakai, Weah was paying it, right? Let's read something down here. Let's read something down, and then I will take it out and explain what I want to say. Now, the bad decision, which raises concern about the country's economic stability, comes as the outgoing Weah administration is 60 days behind on its debt repayment. So this loan that was taken by the government elected Joseph Iman Boakai and Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, when George Weah came into power, he was paying this loan. He was paying this loan that was never taken by him. It was taken by Joseph Iman Boakai and Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. And George Weah came in, he started paying this loan. But Joseph Iman Boakai, because of politics, he said, oh, I will audit George Weah. I will do this. So George Weah said, okay, say you want to audit me. You don't even know what I'm doing for you. You want to audit me? I'm going to stop paying this loan because I didn't take it. You take it. So I will stop paying it. And then when you come to power, let's see who you're going to audit. If you dare try to audit me, you're going to be auditing yourself. And even before you come into power, this is what you're going to come and see. Now, folks, what's going to happen here? So first of all, you hear what they say here. Let me read here and I will take it out. I will explain. They say here, we sincerely hope that all such payment will be clear soon to allow the resumption of withdrawal for the execution of the important operation the bank has been supporting. Now, let me take that out, okay? We're going to discuss this maybe on another Liberian channel, but let me take this out. Now, this is what I want to say. What's going to happen here is, most Liberian, okay, especially for those that didn't believe in George Weah, now they are about to believe in George Weah. Because they are going to be so broken. They don't understand politics. And all they said, President Weah was corrupt, President Weah was this, President. Now knowing this man was paying for a loan that was never taken by him. And at the same time, he was trying his best with the little connection and little resources that he had to build hospital. to build roads and other infrastructure, government building that he built, that the nation since 1847, some of the government building that he put down since 1847, this nation never had those buildings as a nation, as government entity. Okay, but fine, he's gone. Politics has been played, he's gone. Now we are waiting for the new government, and this is where most people are going to be broken, because the newly elected president of government is not going to do any audit, because he knows what is already before him. Now, this is what's going to happen. They are coming in, they don't have money, even though they have their own individual money, but they are not going to put their individual money together to go pay off the loan. So what they are going to do now is, they don't have money and they are new government coming in. They are now going to sell the country to the World Bank or to the United States. And this is what's going to happen. Now the United States is going to tell the newly elected government, in order to give you loan or in order to give you money, you have to do what we tell you to do. For example, you have to cut tie with this nation. You have to cut off tie with this nation. You have to cut off relationship with this foreign company. You have to put American company first. You have to put American interest first. We have to approve anybody that want to make business with your government. We have to approve it. These are the conditions that are going to be given. And then America is going to tell them, we need these resources in your country. We need that mountain. We need that hill. We need that path. We need this. And obviously they're going to agree. They're going to sell the country. They're going to sell the country resources because they need money in order to live up to the expectation that they get to the Liberian people. The bad politics they preach, they need money in order to live to the expectation of the Liberian people. And now they're going to sell the country, and Liberian people will live in a country thinking they are enjoying life, they are having life, thinking that things are good, things are normal, that George Weah brought captivity, brought problem to the nation. George Weah is out, and the newly elected government is not in power. All things are normal, things are fine, things are going on. But their country are being sold. And that's what's going to happen. It's a trap the World Bank has set. So Joseph Imam Boakai, he's not going to audit no one. Because he's going to audit himself. Because the money that he is earning is waiting for him. It's waiting for him to go pay. The money he credited during his 12 years he is earning, the money is waiting for him. The loan is waiting for him to go pay. Because of bad politics, he did. So he's not going to audit. And this is where Liberian people are going to be frustrated. Because the bad politics they play. And like as I was telling somebody yesterday, Joseph Imam Boakai is not going to audit President George Weah because there's nothing there to audit. He's going to be auditing himself. And before he even get there, this is what before him already. The loan they took, he have to pay it. And he don't have it. And he's going to sell the country to America. And this is how America is going to gain her colony back. Do you see what we are going through? So America, the World Bank has set a bit for the newly elected president in order for America to fully get her colony back, her de facto nation back, her territory back, her protectorate back. So most of you Liberians, when you say, oh, America did not like President George Weah government, that was the reason. Because this was the man that came and continued a relationship with China. And continued a relationship with China and even brought in other nations, other people that he was partnership. He knew when he was playing football. He went to them to help. Where were America? What have America done for Liberia? since 1847. Look at the country, one of the poorest countries in the world. That it was a job that make it poor. Was America. They didn't care for us. This is Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is right in their backyard. Puerto Rico is right in the backyard of America. In fact, it's American territory. Puerto Rico don't have president. Puerto Rico have governor. Puerto Rico participate in the federal election. But look at Puerto Rico. Right in the backyard of America. But Puerto Rico is poor. Okay? So that is just a brief history of Liberia and to the Liberian public who are expecting the high expectation. That is why just like Imam Bwaka, in 3 days time, he said what? Limit your expectation. Lower your expectation. In fact, he have already spoken because he already know what is before him. Because the bad part that he played, saying to the Liberian people, he is the rescuer. He is the man of mission. He's coming to rescue Liberian. He's coming to free Liberian. He's coming to get everything. That was his motto, right? Now he's in power. And after he got in power, he started telling Liberian, lower your expectation. Be vigilant. Just like Imam Bwaka have already seen what is before him. That's why he's telling you, lower your expectation. Because it is not going to be the way you think. Lower your expectation. That is America for Liberia. Let's just listen to one video and then we'll call it for the day.
Africa long before Alex Haley and Ruth. Native Sons is about Black Americans who returned to Africa long before Alex Haley and Roots to found the first republic on that continent. Liberia, a nation on the east coast of Africa whose roots are in the United States. Most of the news out of Africa, independent Africa, and Southern Africa has been a catalog of brutality, tribal war, and insane slaughter. Well, Liberia is free of those things, but it suffers from a different, less newsworthy kind of African sickness. The sadness and seediness, petty corruption, and grand larceny, black and white mischief. You'll find it all in Liberia. Liberia calls itself a republic. In fact, it is an oligarchy, ruled by a few, but the few that belong to 300 families descended from the original settlers. Families who are at the top and see to it that they stay at the top. 150 years ago, American philanthropists and freed slaves had the idea of a state in Africa. It was in no sense a return to a promised land, but an escape from a land that held no promise. The Liberian Declaration of Independence is modeled on the American one, except for some key language. It states that Liberians were originally Americans, who were forced by conditions to seek asylum abroad from their deep degradation. And so they landed on this beach as colonists, American colonists, who imposed themselves on what they called the uncivilized natives. Africa was as alien to them as it was to the first white settlers elsewhere. And just as in the white settlements, everything that was done in the name of Christian civilization. They brought with them their Western religion and proceeded to convert the natives to it. The result has been a unique Christianity with echoes of an Africa as old as life. But to those Pilgrim Fathers, America was the old country. They named places Maryland and New Georgia and Virginia. And they built houses that have that same Southern look, a cross between the old slave quarters and the old plantation house. The absence of a colonial legacy has its disadvantages. No tradition of civil service, terrible communications, primitive education and medical care. In Liberia, they started from scratch with little outside help. Not even the conscience money its neighbors received from former colonial masters. All it got from America was a memory. the grand old flag with 49 fewer stars. The currency is the US dollar. The mailboxes are American. The cop on the beat wears a New York City Police Department uniform. The capital is Monrovia, named after US President James Monroe. Liberia is stable without the paratroop enforcers you find in so much of black and white Africa. This is the Liberia most familiar to Americans, the Liberia of President William Tubman. He ran things as an elected dictator for 27 years. It had the look of 19th century America in blackface. Tubman insisted on things like silk hats and frock coats. Everyone, diplomats included, sweated it out in the West African heat. But the clothes clearly defined the classes. The only thing the colonialists had in common with the natives was the color of their skin. It was ruled by elite, by the top 300 families who could trace their lineage back to the Exodus. Well, Tubman's gone. He died 8 years ago and was replaced by this man, William Tolbert. The president still sets the rules for dress. The leisure suit has replaced the frock coat. There have been other changes, but mainly in look and style. It is still ruled by elite, by the top people who regard the nation as a private inheritance. The president disputes this, says Liberia is a democracy. It does have an American-style constitution, a Senate and a House of Representatives, and free elections. But there's only one party, and that's been the case for all of this century. Liberians resent things like the report that Ambassador Andrew Young described them as a bunch of Uncle Toms. And they're angry with President Carter, who passed through the country on his trip to Africa. No way to be treated by the mother country.
You see, the president passed through here and went to Nigeria and stayed there for days and came here for a few hours. That's your daughter? You pass by your daughter and go to somebody else's place and stay 2-3 days, and you don't even lay your head on one pillow in her house. Tell her, we don't like it, and she must change her ways. Thank you.
The top families, known as honorables, number about 40,000 out of Liberia's 1.7 million people. They have names like Carter and Phillips and Dennis. This is a wedding party that the Coopers are giving for the Campbells. There are impossibly complicated cross-connections through intermarriage in these family trees. It ensures that power and money remains in the same hands generation after generation. And the American connection is continually being reinforced. Most young Americo-Liberians are educated in the United States, and they often bring back American brides. That's what one of the Bernard brothers did. They've both just returned from college at North Carolina and Western Michigan to take up the family fortune amassed by their late father, the former director of police. So there's the transportation company, the car rental, the bus service, the heavy trucking of gas.
Right.
There's this extraordinary beachfront property that's going to become a holiday hotel.
Exactly. Apartments, farms, other real estate here and there.
This is not, I got to tell you, an image of Africa and Africans that most Americans have.
We do have a mixture of the indigenous African and then what some would call the civilized African. We are sort of a blend of, both.
One of the reasons for the blend is that marital fidelity in Liberia is almost unheard of. President Tolbert himself has only one wife, but he has children by many women and is said to be as virile at 65 as he was in his 20s. He's a Baptist minister and former head of the World Baptist Alliance, but he feels no moral or ethical conflict.
One of the fascinating things about life in this country, particularly for an outsider, are the family relationships. I mean, how it works. So that a man may have a wife and a couple of mistresses and have children that are born out of wedlock that are nevertheless brought into the family. In your own youth, I gather, sir, that you fathered children outside your immediate family. How does it work?
It works well. Liberian life is peculiar life. In fact,
We are close-knit people. If you touch one, you touch more or less all. Those who are not related by blood somehow or another, they are close. We have what we call the extended family life.
The Bernard boys had the same father, but different mothers. One, the father's wife, the other, their father's friend. It isn't a question of many wives.
No. It's the
one
children.
wife.
We don't. It's not a matter of polygamy. There's only one wife. My father's only had one wife at a time, and it's not a matter of just.
He had one wife, but how many children did he have by women other than that one wife?
Oh, about 13.
Really?
Yeah.
Liberia has great wealth and has a reputation for being easy pickings for the international conglomerates, providing they deal with the right families. Firestone Tire owns most of the rubber, along with eminent Liberians. The field hands earn $7.50 a week. And there's iron. A foreign consortium extracts the ore, and the government extracts half their profits. And for special people, special shares were created. So a few benefit grandly from this joint venture. And Liberia has the world's largest shipping fleet registered under its flag, a flag of convenience. The convenience being tax breaks and casual scrutiny of crews and ships. And there's talk of oil, and there's uranium and gold and diamonds, and vast resources of timberlands that are just beginning to be exploited. But the fact is, most of the wealth that all of those natural blessings Liberia has stays up there among the 40,000 people at the top of the heap. And no one is more top than William Tolbert, this great-great-grandchild of slavery who can trace his roots back to South Carolina, has farms and rubber plantations, and family connections with businesses all over the country. He is president of a republic, but he lives like a feudal prince, or more correctly, an enlightened African chief. All up the West African coast, it is called dash, the small gift to a servant who has performed well. Crisp new U.S. currency to his workers and their families, and while the cameras are there, to just about anyone who asks. President Tolbert deplores the very idea that anyone might believe that Liberia is controlled by family compacts. Well, take a look at the country's biggest private business. The Meserato Corporation is involved in many things. Its biggest enterprise is fishing, catching and freezing shrimp and lobster for the export market. It also has a monopoly on commercial fishing for the domestic market. Vice President in charge of Meserato Fishing, Richard Tolbert, Harvard, Columbia Law School, and the president's nephew.
If you need to get any more people on a temporary basis, do.
Over at Meserato's headquarters, you'll find more Tolberts. Stephanette, vice president in charge of everything. Sietta Tolbert, working her way up through the finance department. And Lori Tolbert, in charge of retail sales.
It's rare to find a firm anywhere that's such a family firm as this one.
If there's any crisis, the family automatically binds together. So that if there are any kind of problems, it's just a matter of picking up the phone and saying, I need you, and everybody comes. And that's the way we've been brought up.
Business is business, politics is politics, and family is family. President Tolbert says he'll not run again when his term is up in 5 years.
We don't have $750,000 to give you either.
Among the most likely candidates are Shad Tubman, son of the former president and son-in-law of Mr. Tolbert. But the man most people in Monrovia say is the hottest candidate is this man, A. Benedict Tolbert, trained at Oberlin University, a gentleman farmer, a dynamo of a politician, and the son of the president.
I am the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the House of Representatives. I'm also the co-chairman on the Committee on Education. I'm also a member of the Committee on Information and Cultural Affairs. Out of government, I am president of the Liberian Federation of Trade Unions, also a minister of the gospel, an evangelist, a spiritualist.
That's a pretty full day you've described.
That's right. Personally, I am a child of the universe, and I belong to the school of ascended masters teaching called the Great White Brotherhood. There are several hierarchies in the universal cosmological world. And so you have a master in charge of wealth, who is called the Master Fortuna. You have a master in charge of governments and nations of the world called El Moya. You have a master in charge of freedom of the universe called Saint Germain. You have a master for justice called Portia. You have a master for wisdom called the goddess of Mercury. But this does not bring about blasphemy, nor does it make about several gods. It doesn't bring about a pantheon of gods. And if it were not so, I wouldn't have told you.
Tell me, in purely practical terms, and one hears this rumored about in the political circles here, that you're a pretty good candidate to be the next president of Liberia.
I believe I am because of the way I live. You see, God doesn't make many leaders. He makes few leaders. If he made many leaders, then he wouldn't have followers.
No, but in a purely personal way, does this cause some family quarrels or tensions?
Not at all. I am not ambitious to become president. I only regard myself as a presidential timber because I know I'm capable of governing not only Liberia, but the whole of Africa. And if the great divine master of human events decides through the minds of the people to use me as a presidential candidate, not only will I rule Liberia, but I shall endeavor to rule the whole of Africa by uniting the continent.
Into one?
This is my goal, my objective, and my aim in my lifetime, to see Africa united.
With A.B. Tolbert as president.
Maybe.
A chip from the block. And I gather you were a chip off your old man's block. Liberians at an official level deny that the country is ruled by nepotism. But at the same time, they point to a number of things. That in white America, it is not unknown for certain powerful families to be in politics and business at the same time, or for the same old names to keep getting all the good jobs, or for networks of relatives and friends to look after their own, or for men in public life to be unfaithful to their wives. It's just that in the United States, hypocritically, we try to cover it up. That, rather refreshingly, is not one of the American qualities those African pilgrim fathers brought with them when they came to the dark continent.
Yeah, you want to become the president for the whole of Africa, but you cannot unite a small nation like Liberia. How can you become a Pan-Africanist? How can you become the leader for the entire Africa? You can't even put Liberians together. You know, you have only family ruling the country, family have the same business, all of that. You alone have all those titles. How can you become the president for Africa? That was funny. But again, that's just a history. So you see the history of that country as we started back, because the reason why these people live with it, because their forefathers, were taught by the colonizer to do what they did in Liberia. And then because their forefathers were taught by the colonizer and they grew up with it, and it became, something power. Power is very influential. So what happened as they got older and started having children, they passed it on to their children. And that's how it kept going, and until today, we have reached at that point, and it's still going on. That power struggle between, the native and the American Liberian is still happening today. To the extent, even during the George Weah presidency, I would say 2 or 3 years back, we have these same people in Washington, D.C. It was so pitiful. And they were asking the United States government to put sanctions on Liberia, the descendant of the American Liberian. They went to the American, to Washington, D.C., and they start telling Congress, we are part of America, and our forefathers came from here. So we are descendants of those people that came from here that went to Liberia. And those descendants have come to ask you in favor We want for sanction to be put on Liberia. Imagine that. So that power struggle is still going on. A native man came into power, and a common man said, no, it can't happen. We the ones supposed to be in power. And then and the native man too will come in power and say, yeah, you did this to us. We have to do the same thing. So it never balanced. So when the native man was there, the native man asked the common man, for us to come together to work. The common man said, no, I can't work with you. I'm not going to work under you. Under president, we are government. So that power, that grief is still there. Okay, it's still there going. We are not united. The country is divided. No one should tell you, oh, Liberian, we are cool, we are no, the country is divided. And it's divided because of a half-eight root cause. Because the foundation was never set. That's why when they left from here, when these people left from here, they went to Africa. Our brothers and sisters left from here, they went to Africa. The native people they met there, the traditional people they met there, they told the colonizer, we will integrate our people into society. And because they went with different motives, that did not work. Because they went to have a colony. So that did not work. And they stayed there. They took the land from the people. Just how they took the land in America, they took the land in from the Australian. That's how they took it in Liberia. Just how they wanted to take it in South Africa, but the South African fought back. It was the same way. You see, so the struggle we are experiencing today, the division we are experiencing today, it started from back, from the formation of that country when it was called Liberia, from that 1847 up to today. That problem started from there. And you saw it, you saw it in the video, you saw it, how consistently the United States have been fighting our country through through other sophisticated means. You saw it. So we can't keep blaming one another. Oh, is the American Liberian, or is the native? There's a root cause to everything we are fighting. We cannot focus on the issue we have between us. Let us focus on, first of all, what brought about this issue. And that can only come about if we go into history and take up emotion. That's why, look, if you're teaching the Liberian history, you have to take up emotion. You got to speak what happened and then explain why this happened. But if you just explain what happened, and then other people are going to start feeling, oh, but this is what you have to explain what happened. Take the emotion out, explain what happened, and then give the reason. Because we as revolutionary, we are looking at the reason. First of all, why this happened. That's what we are looking at. So we don't have no reason teaching Liberian history like, oh, this is what the other people did to these people. For one fight, conflicts will always happen. Conflict will always happen. But the issue here is, what brought about that conflict? And then you want to know and then see how to solve it so that it can't happen again. So in order to solve the issue between that American Liberian days, that look, it is easier to say, you know what, let us come together, let us forget about what happened. No, we have to teach the story, okay, and then explain first of all why this happened. And then so that when we see foreign influence coming, we will know exactly this is what it did to us. This is what happened, and it pulled us apart, and it pulled us together, and today it brought this. And then we will find, and in fact, once we see it coming, we already know. That's how we're going to solve the issue in about American Liberian native, this, that, or else we're going to keep fighting like this. And that's how America is going to keep using either of us to do what we want to do. Because at the end of the day, the government that is coming, whether it's native people or whether it's American Liberian or the elite, the elitism, if they come in and they don't do what America want to do, what's going to happen? America are going to go on the side of the native, because the native people are going to rebel against the political elite. And once they rebel, America are going to gain that support, because America will want to remove the elite who are in power that is not in support of American interests. And then when the native come in, okay, or the other people come in, and then at some point of time, if they get tired with American controlling them, and then they want to do their thing, as a nation, right? Then what happened? Then the elite too will now go against the people that are there, or the elite, or the masses, as I'll put it, the masses, right? And then what will happen? America will then support the elite again to go against the masses. So you see here. So we have to teach the history, put emotion aside, put this aside. Oh, he's talking about that. We have to talk about it. Put it aside and then explain, get the history and explain first of all why this happened. And that's how we will see the common differences and get together. And that's how we will, come to a resolution or solution for foreign influence, to keep putting us together. Because when you look at the history of Liberia, everything that's been happening in Liberia has been a cause of the US. Working with certain group of people. When another group come in and they don't agree, America go well with another group of people. That's how it been happening until through all the war I was in Liberia. Okay? So the newly elected government that is coming in, we shouldn't expect anything better. I can tell you for that. We shouldn't expect anything better. All they're coming to do here is to cut all tie with other nations. Because they need the money, they need loan. So they have to cut tie with other nations that America do not want their influence in Liberia. They have to stop tie with those people. And that's how they're going to get a loan back. And I will come here again and I will tell you people, oh, the loan have been given to them. Because this is what they did, this is what they did. And that's what's going to happen. Like I'm telling you here, that's what's going to happen. America going to tell them to cut tie with certain country. And then they will get them, because they don't have money to pay that loan back. So they're just going to do what America wants, and then they go ahead. That's what's going to happen. So those that support the incoming government, don't put all your intention in it like, oh, this is what they're going to do. You're going to be frustrated. Because I will tell you, they're going to sell that country. That's what's going to happen. They're going to sell that country. That's what's going to happen. All right. Yeah, but let me play, this 1 minute video and then we cut it for the day. Oh, it's not even here. Yeah, Kwame, I posted the link already. The link for the book. I posted it, so if you can see, it's right here. I posted it already. It's there. I posted in a YouTube, and then, but one of them I think is Facebook. It's telling me it don't want to come, but I posted the link. I think you can see it somewhere. If you see it somewhere, I posted the link.
In the world for 75 years. But he didn't mention that we killed 2 million Koreans, between 3 and 5 million Vietnamese, Laotians, and Cambodians, and led directly to the rise of Pol Pot and another 2 million dead there. You talk about the 1 million dead Iraqis, the 500,000 dead Syrians, and Pakistanis, and Afghans, and Libyans, and now Yemenis, where at the very minimum, 250,000 people have been killed. The war in Somalia, something like 250,000 people died in that famine, most of them children under the age of 5. The people who always get left out of that are the people of Indonesia and East Timor and Bangladesh. 500,000 dead in the civil war caused by the American coup in Guatemala, El Salvador, and Nicaragua. He always says America has kept the peace for 75 years. Does it only matter that Russia hasn't fought Germany again? And these other people's lives just don't count? The USA has killed a Holocaust worth of civilians. Also heard that the U.S. has kept the peace in the world for 75 years. But he didn't mention that we killed 2 million Koreans, between 3 and 5 million Vietnamese, Laotians, and Cambodians, and led directly to the rise of Pol Pot and another 2 million dead there. You talk about the 1 million dead Iraqis, the 500,000 dead Syrians, and Pakistanis, and Afghans, and Libyans, and now Yemenis, where at the very minimum, 250,000 people have been killed. The war in Somalia, something like 250,000 people died in that famine, most of them children under the age of 5. The people who always get left out of that are the people of Indonesia and East Timor and Bangladesh. 500,000 dead in the civil war caused by the American coup in Guatemala, El Salvador, and Nicaragua. He always says America has kept the peace for 75 years. Does it only matter that Russia hasn't fought Germany again? And these other people's lives just don't count? The USA has killed a Holocaust worth of civilians. Also
All right, family. I know we've been here for very long. We've been here since 1 o'clock, and now it's 4:30. So this is today's presentation. So thank you for tuning in. Share the video, ask others to subscribe so that they can see us whenever we go live. And thank you for your donation and to those are how they call it, drop out the chat today. Oh yeah. So yeah, thank you for donating and hey, that's how we continue with the movement. So let's continue the support. Let's continue to share. Let's continue to subscribe, like. Let's continue to comment. Let's continue to dialogue. So for things, this is our time. It is to our knowledge, it is to our best and to our advantage that we can make use of social media to get to our people in other parts of the world that our forefather did not have. They did not have the opportunity to technology, and now that we have it, we have to use it to get to our people that we can't travel to, we can't see them physically, touch them physically, but we can sit somewhere in anywhere in part of the world and speak to them, and the video go viral, the video go live, whatsoever they see and watch it. So let's continue to engage in dialogue and let's continue to support. Peace, and I will see you Saturday and also Sunday with another episode.